Nice. Like the brew there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Eric. Oh, okay. Erik Sayles. I was just going to ask you. Erik Sayles is joining us tonight. And what is that you're drinking?
It is a
Victory.
Yeah. So, cheers. Thank you for having me on.
Cheers. Thank you for coming. Tony, the usual for you?
Yes. Yeah. Gross Miller Lite. Yep.
So Midwest of you. It's Jameson for me. Hold on. I have to do this. It's kind of obligatory. All right. We're good. Their ladies check was late, so that's all they get.
Yeah, so if they're going to be product placement, like, do I need to
that? There you go.
You know what's interesting about Victory is, like, I consult at the Downtown School of Rock, and it's right there. It's in the same parking lot of the Victory Brewery. So it's right. Are you near there? That's where you are currently?
No, I live in Manayunk.
Manayunk. Okay, yeah. That's okay. I was confused. I thought for a minute that you actually were over in the downtown area, but you're Manayunk.
No, I lived in Berwyn for a long time, for like 17 years or something. But I've been in Manayunk for like four years.
The past 4 years. Okay.
Yeah, the last 4 years. Yep.
Now, at what point are you performing there, like in Manayunk, or were you? Are you performing currently?
Yeah, I mean, I play out, but not. Gosh, the last time I played in Manayunk was when I lived in the suburbs, when I didn't live here. So no, I haven't done a gig. Well, there is a spot down the street from here called the Dawson Street Pub, which is like off the main street. It's kind of like a local hang, and I've played there over the years, but nothing regularly. No, I pretty much rarely play in Manayunk.
Okay.
So it's just freelance. So I'm wherever I get a call to play.
Okay.
That, could be local, could be not too far away. New York, Baltimore every once in a while, but mostly in this area.
Okay, most of it's in the area, but you're back out. You're playing again. You like regular?
Yeah, like right now things are kind of slow, but like last year was like probably one of my busiest gigging years.
Really?
I remember? Yeah.
Yep. I mean, I guess since before the shutdown, right?
No, even pre the shutdown.
It was busier. Okay.
Yeah, it was like the busiest gigging that summer, like spring. Yeah, through the year, really, that I've probably ever had.
So, what is the? I'm going to be jumping all over the place, but what is the like last year, your busiest year? What were the primary gigs? What were they?
It was such a smattering of different things. So, I played with a number of singer-songwriters. Mostly, like the one that probably works the most is this guy Ben Arnold, who's been in this area for a long time.
Okay.
So it's like between kind of like my regular, I guess you could say, singer-songwriter gigs, picking up gigs that are just like, that are just random. Can you do this jazz trio gig?
Right.
It's just things like that. It just seemed to like, every month I would have maybe like 7 things on the calendar, and by month's end it had like, tripled or something like that. I've got some friends that run like contemporary gospel church bands, and like the people that are in the band are pretty well established with some internationally touring artists. So they might be out on the road. So, I was available to fill in, things like that.
So are these gigs primarily reading gigs for you?
No, none of them are. I'm a terrible reader.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, if someone puts changes are fine, but when I do trio gigs and I'm carrying, if it's bass, drums, and guitar, I'm carrying melody and harmony.
Right.
I can't really veer off too much far from the tunes that I know and have worked through some chord melody stuff. But I like, if I went on a gig and someone threw, Anthropology up, which is a tune that I don't really play, I could never sight read it. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
It's just a muscle I never really exercised. When I was in college and studying, ironically, my teacher was like an incredible sight reader. He was like known for that. I mean, aside from other things, but Tom Giacobetti.
Yeah, Tom. Yeah.
There were just stories I heard of I had him my last 2 years, and that's when he came to the school. So my freshman and sophomore year, I didn't know of him, but all my teachers did. And I was talking to one of my teachers, and they mentioned that, I mentioned that Tom was going to be my teacher, and they said, it's stories of him like transcribing like tribal tech songs and writing the parts out on like the train from Jersey to the city,
Yeah, like in real time.
And just like writing it down.
Wow.
Yeah, he used to put up, like, he did a lot of pit work, and he would show me like the book from whatever he was working on. And, there were times where he was just an incredible sight reader.
Yeah.
He would bring in a Joe Pass chord melody and like sight read it,
Wow.
Yeah, I remember Scott McGill was talking about him and how he was trained under him and just the violinitudes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think and we may have talked about it on the show, but I remember when Scott came to my school, and we'll talk about that too, Eric. My school in Wilmington that I had, the Grand School of Music, he came in to do a day seminar, and he sight read, this was like a very Giacobetti thing. He sight read Perpetual Motion.
Oh, wow.
And then he sight read it in retrograde.
Yeah.
That's when I asked myself, I was like, why am I the director here?
Yeah.
I should be out taking the trash out, But but you were in constant that world, Eric. You were there in that world. And was this the University of the Arts?
Yeah.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit about your experience there and how you
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a great experience there. It was I don't know, an interesting time to be a student there, in that the school was growing. I guess like it really grew after I left, but I know that my freshman class, guitar wise, there were more guitar majors than in the whole rest of the school.
Wow. What year is this?
It was 89.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
it was a guitar world, especially in Philly. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so going into University of the Arts, I was kind of forced into the major, meaning like at that time there was only two paths you could go down, and that's either your jazz if you want to be a performance major, you're either a jazz performance major or you're a classical performance major.
Oh.
Yeah, as far as getting a degree in performance, like nowadays, University of the Arts, as well as like a lot of schools, have these, UArts, it's called MBET, which is like music business, entrepreneurship and technology, or something like that. I forgot what the acronym exactly stands for, something along those lines. But, there's no proficiency requirement. There's no private lesson. There's no recitals, no juries. It's basically like, if I'm a person that, I don't know, I play a little bit and I want a smattering of like music business and technology and recording and things like that, this is the path that you would take, and I honestly probably would have taken that if that was available to me, because I didn't really know anything about jazz and wasn't really, my high school was really small. I didn't have like a jazz band. Fortunately, before I went to UArts, I went to GIT in Hollywood, which, you know, our Musicians Institute, as some people know it.
Yeah.
Tony went.
Yeah.
Oh, really? What year?
Yeah, I graduated in 1984.
Okay. Yeah, it was
He's old, man.
88 to 89.
Oh, so you
Not
graduated
that far
from GIT?
away.
I know. I'm
not too
just
far.
busting balls. But
So,
okay,
Eric, you know what's interesting is that when I was at GIT, it was still a very jazz-oriented school too. So, although I did take jazz band in high school and stuff like that, I was looking more for the rock side. They had that, but it was still also a growing school at the time. And as I left, and you probably knew by the time you were there in '89 that it was a completely different school from '79 to '84 than it was from '84 to '89.
Yeah, I don't know when they moved from. I think it wasn't that long after I got there, or that much before I had gotten there, that they moved to, I forgot what street it is. It starts with an M. Like, from what I heard, and they still had some of these studios that were above businesses on Hollywood Boulevard, like, you know, second floor type situations. But this was like, you know, a freestanding, like, big facility that had like a giant like concert stage area, and, you know, it was just dedicated to the students solely. And I think, you know, it's grown a lot since shortly after I left. They started adding more majors and things like that. Or I guess at the time that I was there, you couldn't major. It was just a certificate of completion to 12 months. But now you can get like a 4-year degree and a bachelor's, stuff like that. So
you're saying now that it's accredited, like
I think that the school was always like accredited under the eyes of like that it was
it was recognized
institution of higher learning of some sort, or something like that. But you're right, you could not get a degree from there then. And then I think it gradually went to like you could get a 2-year degree, and now you can get a 4-year. And I think it's been like that for a little while.
Yeah.
But Musicians Institute really opened my eyes to a lot of things musically and players.
Well, I was going to ask that. So, because I want to stay on the GIT thing for a bit before we go to because I'm fascinated with this. And we actually talked to Jimmy about this, the difference between like the West Coast and the East Coast. I'll get to that. My point being is, so when you were at GIT, who did you study under? Who were your direct counselors?
I can't even remember the guy's name.
Apparently he didn't do well in the industry. It wasn't like Frank Mbali or, you know.
No, it wasn't. I don't know how many of those people were in that capacity, in that, like, for the named people like Scott Henderson, Joe Diorio, Tony. And I don't know how different this was when you were there, but you would get the schedule every quarter, but they called it open counseling.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Joe Diorio is going to be in room 203 from 3 to 6 Mondays and Wednesdays, and you could just come and go. You didn't have to schedule anything. You might go and he's just sitting there by himself, and then another time you can go and the room is full and you kind of like fly on the wall. I wasn't at a point in my playing where I felt comfortable utilizing any of that. I mean, I went to a number of them, but I just sat there, and a lot of what they were talking about really was over my head. I wasn't playing tunes. I didn't know how to play over changes, you know, and I was kind of coming from more of a Vi, Satriani kind of. I started like in high school listening to like Al Di Meola and McLaughlin, but I didn't know what they were doing. I knew that I liked that stuff, but it was definitely more centered in like Hendrix, Zeppelin, like rock guitar.
Okay, then
Stuff.
yeah, you're the perfect segue, dude, because that's kind of where I was going. Like, so backing up from GIT, what was it like? What was the impetus to the guitar for you? Like, who were your main?
It was Jimmy Page.
Really?
I mean, that was like, yeah. I mean, Led Zeppelin was like my favorite.
So is there a story behind like when you first heard it, where you were like, I mean, it doesn't matter whether it was Zeppelin or whatever.
No, it went. You know, I don't have a specific moment that I can remember, but I do know that like I grew up. I spent from like really young, like infant till about 10, on this cul-de-sac, and there was like just every house had 3 kids in it, and there was like, you know, there were, most of the kids were about my age or older. So when I was young, I had a lot of like, you know, high school and 8th grade, 7th grade kids. It's, you know, at a time when people who aren't musicians, you know, typically start getting into music. And so it was just like, you know, they were like turning me on to Kiss and AC/DC, early AC/DC, and Leonard Skinner, and, you know, the stuff that was being played in the mid to late 70s. And then, yeah, I just kind of like, I don't know, found them somehow, them being Led Zeppelin, and just really gravitated towards their music, and obviously Jimmy's playing. So that was really like why I wanted to play guitar. And then came Hendrix, and those were like, I think, my 2 biggest first influences, I would say.
So you get your do you remember your first electric guitar?
Yeah. It was a Cort Les Paul copy.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, so now you've got this Cort Les Paul copy, and you're doing your thing. And obviously you're progressing because you were obviously dedicated.
Yeah.
Were you studying locally at that time, or was this something that you were just doing on your own?
No, I had a teacher all through high school.
Okay.
And he was coming from more of he was a classical major, but he wasn't like, you know, completely immersed solely in the classical world, and was like not really hip to current music or other types of styles of guitar. So, you know, I got to give him credit. He tried really hard to get me to learn the stuff that I should have been working on, but I just wanted to learn Zeppelin tune.
Like, hey, this string can move this way too, man.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I after high school, I knew I wanted to continue and go to college for music. So I applied to Berkeley, and my only school I applied to, didn't get in. And
okay, can we? I'm sorry, Eric. You know, tell me what happened when you say you didn't get in. Let's go there.
I didn't cut the mustard, man.
Okay, well, wait a minute. Let's talk about that. Like, so what was did you do an actual audition, or was it a submission?
No, I'm pretty sure that I sent a tape in, and then I had an actual in-person, you know, interview, but it was in a office. I don't know what this person's title was. He was a musician. Obviously, he was part of the admissions office, but it was basically, you know, him sitting there and me and my mom, and him just basically giving me an oral exam, which I just failed completely. Just like asking me about, you know, simple, how many sharps are in the key of E.
Right. Yeah, the whole.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that stuff. I told you my guitar teacher tried, but
yeah.
You're like, no, foxy lady, baby, foxy lady.
And
I feel your pain, man.
It really didn't go well, and I felt like, you know, he said, he goes, after I like couldn't answer any of his questions, he was like, so why do you want to come here?
Wow.
And I was just like really embarrassed, and you know, head in the sand, felt defeated, and so then I took a year off because I didn't have any plans, and I had some friends going to UVM in Burlington, Vermont. So I moved there and like washed dishes and played music and saw Phish as like a local band at the bar down the street.
No shit.
Wow.
Oh my God. That's crazy.
And
now did that have any impact on you?
I'm sorry?
Did that have any impact on you at all?
At
the time.
I knew that they were definitely doing things that were not no other local band was doing what they were doing. And
I can imagine that. Yeah,
you know, it was an interesting period of time. This was in '87, and Burlington had, you know, there's a few other colleges in Burlington, but there's a number of bars there, and like any good college town, and a lot of live music. And they had a bar down the street called Texas, which was just a hair metal cover band, you know. And
I probably played there.
That was that?
I probably played there.
And then there was, you know, this place that Phish played and a number of other bands. And so it was just a nice, I don't know, I guess both my itches got scratched. I could just like, you know, go from one to another. Fortunately, at that time, Vermont was grandfather claused into the, when the drinking age became 21. So I made the cut so I could go to bars. And so I used to go down to Texas and watch people do, you know, the Quiet Riot covers and all that stuff that was going on then, when like spandex and basically priming me for my year in Hollywood. And then
there's a reason for everything.
Yeah. And then I go and see Phish and scratch my head at what sounds were coming from the stage. You know, it was just, I mean, Trey is just an incredible guitar player, and I don't know if you're familiar with their stuff. I'm not a big fan in the sense that like I don't go to any shows and I don't really listen to them much, but I have a lot of, you know.
I've had to transcribe a few of their pieces, and I have nothing but admiration for them. I'm not a jam. I know they're coined as a jam band, and I hate to bring up monikers, but I'm not a fan of the genre. Yeah. Because to me, and I think we're going to get into this later, because I want to stay on your trajectory because this is fucking great. Sure. Is that to me, sometimes it's like a jam band is like, we'd be a fusion band if we really knew what we were doing.
I think that they knew what they were doing. I think that I know that they know what they're doing.
No, I know what they're, but you see what I'm saying. I maybe you don't, but my point being is like, it's but it's cool at the same time. Like, I don't follow that stuff. Like, I don't go to the shows either, and I'm not shitting on Phish. I mean, I think look, I will never argue with their success. I mean, they're the shit. Sure. But I guess I get wrapped up in, and you know, bitch slap me for this if I'm wrong, is if I'm going to listen to that, if I'm going to commit to that, why wouldn't I commit to Chick Corea? And maybe you're the person to talk to for this, to enlighten me, to say, well, you're listening to it from two different, you know what I mean, worlds.
I mean, my 2 cents on that would just be the fact that, like, I think I know that this is a broad stroke here. Obviously, there are fringes and people have different opinions on things, but you know, I think that jam band stuff is more accessible than electric band. I mean, of course it is. There's way less information harmonically going on, rhythmically going on. So it's like, you know, you've got, people know where 2 and 4 are. They can like dance and move to it and feel it more on a visceral level than like, you know, electric band. People might be like, oh, it's cool, but like, what's happening? Like, I don't get this, all these funny notes, you know, like, so I think it kind of bridges the gap between, you know, genre wise.
No, I like that. I like that explanation. It kind of makes sense. It's almost like if you took a look at Phish let's stay on your point about you know, being accessible.
Right.
If you took a look, and the reason I say that is because, you know, when I have listened to Phish, even on the records, you know, I mean, there are some intricate parts. Like, I mean, and they fuck with time signatures very, you know. But from your standpoint, and again, I'm trying to follow you. So correct me if I'm wrong. Is okay. I don't know if the information. I think the information may be the same, but the delivery might be more like, okay, so with Chick, so you've got these
define information, I guess.
Okay, good. All right.
I feel like the information is not the same, but like, you know.
Okay, so when you're thinking of information, and I love this because this has been a plight of mine as a composer. Okay, so when you say information, obviously, if you're listening to a head of a Chick Corea tune, like let's take "Got a Match."
Yeah,
because "Got a Match" is just a head, and then then you blow over it, right?
Yep.
Would that be too much information for an audience for Phish? With the feel, da 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 da, you know what I mean? It's going, and then you're blowing. You're just everyone has their solos. Or do you think there's an aesthetic attached to it?
I just think in general that, and again, this is like, I don't by any means want to like say that Phish fans can't handle like what's going on.
Oh no, I don't think you're saying that at all. I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I'm just trying to figure it out for me.
When you think about like fusion, or I'll just call it all jazz.
Okay.
When you think about like, because really fusion does, for the most part, use harmony, extended harmony, seventh chords, and all their diatonic and non-diatonic extensions and things like that. Like, you know, so jazz is definitely more cerebral, and it forces the listener, if they want to go on that journey, I guess, to really have to like listen and you know, it's like, I don't know, it's like an acquired taste,
or even accept the language.
Yeah, it is a harder language, right, to interpret, even for a non-musician. You know, I have friends who don't play anything, but they're like really big music fans, and they can appreciate that, and they listen to it. Obviously, you don't have to be a musician to listen to it, but I think those people are far and few between as far as like the general public goes, obviously, because like when you look at the record sales on the music pie chart, and there's jazz, the little tiny little sliver there, and rock, so, you know, 70% of it, or 60 or whatever. So there's a reason for that. And I think part of it is just that the information that is being delivered is not as digestible, for lack of a better adjective, to the general population.
Now, is that a generational thing, do you think? Now I'm digging deeper into the rabbit hole, and you're going to kick my ass for this.
Generational, like, well,
I'm asking this. I don't want to interrupt, but I'm asking this on two levels, because there was a time in history where people would go to they would go to the bottom line, and they would go to see jazz and be a part of that. And these were non-musicians. It was part of the evening. I mean, even in Philly, there was a time in Philly, and Eric will get to that, you know, where there was a time in Philly where you could go see great jazz throughout the week. My question is like, what happened to, like, because I mean, jazz is participatory even to the listener, but even to a non-musician who was invested in the act of participating in jazz, they did that. And I bring it up, long scope, because my point being is that that's what's happening to rock music, right? Because music is now digested as wallpaper, which is what I feel happened to jazz. Why they ended up in the lounges, you know. I mean, there was a time we could go to a club and get our faces blown off from just great improvisers over a simple head. But then getting back to the Phish thing, and I'm sorry I'm pontificating about this, but getting back to the Phish thing, just like the Grateful Dead, was a vibe. It was like you were part of that ocean of. But obviously they were selling records, so that people were bringing that home.
Yeah, I don't know what I really don't know enough about them to give an educated comment on, like, you know, how much Phish's trajectory followed the Dead's. Not that the Dead didn't sell records, but I think, you know, the whole thing was just tour until you fall.
But that's what Phish was doing.
And Phish did too. So I don't even know how much, like, you know.
But that's part of the aesthetic, like, to me, and I'm bringing that's a broad stroke that I'm using on aesthetic. But you know,
I always thought, like, when I went to Dead shows and when I was like listening to the Dead, and knew of, like, you know, the various health issues that people had in the band, and I was always like, I wonder who's going to carry this torch, you know. And it wound up by being.
I'm not laughing because there's a story behind that, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, you know, it is you know, the parking lot, the whole the culture of everything that it envelops is part of the whole ball of wax that makes it alluring. That's not the only thing. The music, I'm not taking anything away from the music, but, you know, and that's obviously not for everybody. I'm sure that there are guys and people or women, they just go to the show and then they go home, but, you know, there's plenty of people.
But it's fascinating for a band like that, and I'm going to leave it at this because I don't want to, like, spend a whole bunch of time on Phish. And of course, Tony's dogs are barking in the background. Fucking Midwest, man. Yeah, dude, close your window. There's an idea. Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Those dogs are, like, very substantial dogs. Where I was heading at with the whole Phish thing is to be able to play like that, to be able to go out and express that level of playability to a wide audience is pretty cool. Like, I mean, that's
it's obviously sizable enough of a chunk to make them as successful as they are. But I know what you mean. It's you know, it's not they're not the Stones.
No. But I mean, I find the whole, you know, again, I just find it fascinating that, you know, you have there's an interesting genre where they're pulling from this, but it's not clear that they're pulling from that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's why I asked the question: is like, could you take the audience from a Phish show and then bring Chick Corea on stage, and could they have the same experience? And to me, like, if I listen to what was that, Romantic Warrior, I don't know what it is about that record, but when I listen to that, I'm like, I see that a Phish audience could completely get into that.
I would definitely say that a Phish audience would be more open if anybody was going to, like, dig a jazz fusion show or a double bill with, you know, with another band. It's going to be, and not another fusion band, you know, it would be some type of jam band situation, because it is kind of one step removed. It's not like, you know, you're taking I don't know, a group of people that's going to, like, a reunion tour for Blink 182, and you're forcing them to listen to fusion. Like, that's a really big gap to bridge. You know what I mean?
No, I understand. I understand where you're coming from.
I think Phish in the trajectory of, like, lineage of like styles, you know, I would say that jam band scene is the next stop on the train is, like, fusion, you know.
But do you think, and this is my final comment, because I want to get back onto your GIT trajectory and back to Philly. Do do you think that a Phish audience, let's pretend Alan Holdsworth is still alive, and Phish comes out and plays a set and goes, "We'll be right back," and then Alan comes out. Do you think that the Alan Holdsworth experience would flow with a Phish audience?
I mean, I'm sure it would. I'm sure it would. You know, I'm not going to say they're going to get like, you know, rotten vegetables thrown at them or anything.
No, I have a feeling that like it, whatever
I was left scratching my head.
But that's the thing. Can you imagine like a Phish audience, like high as fuck, and don't know who Alan is? Like, let's pretend he's alive. Let's pretend he's still among us, and he comes out and he starts playing. What the fuck? Holy shit!
I mean, everybody says that, you know, all the jazz heads who go and see him, that's what they say. So,
you know, can I tell you a story? Do you know the Podesta brothers?
Rich and Rob Podesta?
Yep. Yeah, I played with Rob once. So one time he comes into the club and he goes, "Hey," because he knew I was a Holdsworth fan. I might edit this out. I might not. Depends on my mood. He goes, "Hey, Chris, I transcribed a Holdsworth solo. I learned absolutely fucking nothing."
Really?
Yeah. And it was like, I didn't take that as an insult. I was like, that's interesting that, you know, that, you know, because I think there's so many different ways that people hear music and perceive music and then put their music out.
This was Rob who said this, or Rich?
The guitar player.
Rob,
yeah. I used to play he did a few fill-ins with me at the Grotto back in the day. I mean, a phenomenal player.
Yeah.
But, you know, came in, he's like, "Hey, I learned one of those Holdsworth solos because you turned me on to this Holdsworth guy." He's like, "I didn't learn anything."
He wasn't being like facetious. He was being.
No, not at that time. Now, keep in mind, I was actually sober at that time, so I was pretty clear. He might not have been, but you know,
I don't know if he was saying it tongue in cheek or.
It didn't sound like it was, but it could have been. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine learning one of his solos and not coming away with something. You know.
I just think, well, I mean, he's pretty traditional, you know.
He is. He is a pretty trad player. Although I have seen him play like some.
I've never seen him play a solid body. Are you telling me he plays a solid?
And
wow!
He kind of shredded it up too.
That motherfucker! Fuck him.
Yeah. He wasn't solely like a complete, you know, flat wound jazz box guy, although that is the world and he sang really well too. That's what it was. I was at a not to jump too far forward, but I used to own a music school, and the location that I'm talking about, because I had like this really large waiting area. It was like aesthetically pleasing, and so wedding bands used to rent the space to do showcases.
Oh, cool.
And
okay.
It was then, this is a long time ago, and it was like some kind of like power ballad that had like a ripping guitar solo in it. And it was like a duet between a guy and a woman, and he sang and like killed it. I didn't know he sang. I only knew him as like a jazz guy. And then like this song comes on and he's like steps up to the mic, and I was blown away, actually.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
No, love you. I love you, Rob. He was a great guy.
Yeah,
I just don't remember him ever driving, because I always had to drive him to the gigs and then drive him home. But no, great player. And I didn't know he sang either, but it doesn't surprise me. Actually, I shouldn't say that I didn't know he sang, because I remember one night at the Grotto, we were doing a tune and he started to scat. He was doing the George Benson thing.
Yeah.
Which, of course, again, and Tony knows this, I had no business being, I had no idea why I lasted 3 years at the Grotto.
Was that a regular,
no,
like a weekly?
That was a Monday. Yeah, every Monday night, man. It was regular, but I took advantage of it. Not advantage. I shouldn't say that. I wasn't looking for the gig, but it was a gig with Joe Masmiano and myself, and then Joe occasionally would be on the road, so he would call me and be like, "Hey, Chris, can you get a sub for me?" And Bedesta was the only number that was given to me. So Bedesta came in he only did like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And they were fun. They were fine. I mean, he could have done it solo if he wanted to, but again, I'm sitting there like, I'm here because of Joe, and now I'm the guy. I'm the band. I'm the duet leader. I'm like, what am I doing here?
When was that? What year was that? Right?
You guys want to play some Yngwie or some UFO? Oh no, not here. That was 90. Joe had me come down in, I want to say 93 into 94. It was 93, 94, 95. That was the time. And I think that was around the time that you were, because I was at the music place at that time.
Oh, teaching?
But before we get to the TMP thing, yeah, I was teaching. Yeah. And that was my main gig. I was doing that. And then from there, I went on to play country music, which is a different story. But jumping back to we're back in the 80s. And I know where you're coming from. The Hendrix, Page, rock guys. You go to Berkeley, it's a shit show.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you go to Berkeley, it's a shit show.
Yes.
I can't, you know what, as an aside note, like, because I'm such an admirer of you and your playing, I'm like sitting there going, man, I don't know. I don't know why that sounds encouraging. That
it happens.
A guy as good as you.
Well,
okay, so now,
we're all at ground zero at some point in our playing, and I clearly was not the player that I was even 3 years after that. But
wait a minute though. I'm going to correct that, because you get to Berkeley and you're sitting there in an office, and they're like, "Oh, how many sharps are in the key of E?" You're like, "I can play this shit, motherfucker, but I can't intellectualize it." That's fine. But you were probably playing the shit out of that. Like you could probably you were already a player.
I could play okay. I mean, but yes, there is definitely. I just think that obviously the guy who ran the interview could have handled things a whole lot differently.
Probably because he wasn't a guitar player.
Maybe. I have no idea.
I'm just trying to make you feel better.
Oh, thanks.
But I'm clearly failing.
Where were you 30 some odd years ago?
All right, so now you're at GIT.
I needed your wind beneath my wings back.
I am so putting that in the soundtrack. All right, so now you're off west. So GIT.
I went to Burlington, and then I was like, I had a friend from high school that was going to GIT, and I was like, well, let me check this place out. So I went in '88, and that was a whole, never been to the West Coast, never lived in a city. It was a whole culture shock.
Oh yeah, it was.
I moved from rural Vermont to I was living on the Lanewood Apartments, which are right next to the Hollywood High School, like right behind the Roosevelt Hotel, next to Mann's Chinese Theater.
Yep.
Sure.
Just a couple blocks from the school.
Okay.
So right in the pit of it, and it was just it was a crazy place.
Yeah.
Probably still is.
So was it there that you started to develop, or did you ever develop like a regimen where you're like, okay, I have a trajectory, I have an idea of what I want to do on the guitar.
Yeah, I don't think my idea was that clear there. Like I knew I just loved the instrument. I wanted to play and I wanted to get better. And I spent a lot of time, at that point in time, guitar was just like the solo was the vehicle for the song, in what was the rock, it was on the radio, it was on MTV. It was just like everything had like a shredding guitar solo in it.
Did you ever do that thing where the new single would come out and you would just fast forward to the guitar solo?
Oh, sorry.
I did that all the time.
I probably did. I mean, I can tell you the only reason why I rented Crossroads was just the last. I'm
not the only one.
10 minutes. I mean, I remember with friends just like watching that last part over and over and over again.
Yeah, back in those days, you're like, guys, hold on, just light that joint. Hold on, it's still fast forwarding. We'll get there.
It was an epic movie.
But you know what, Eric? You know what I loved about that movie? And it wasn't the battle, which I actually had to do. I had to do that opening for George Lynch. I had to recreate that battle. Yeah, I don't want to talk about that. But what I do want to talk about is the one line that happened at the end of that movie, where he says to Ralph Macchio's character, Willie Brown's character says to Ralph Macchio's character, he goes, "You got to take the music beyond where you found it."
Mm-hmm.
And I was a kid when I saw that movie, and it never left my head. I just remember going, "Oh, well, yeah, that makes all the sense in the world."
Sure.
So, not to get off into that tangent at this point, but that was my takeaway from that movie. Was like,
that's a good takeaway.
Yeah, take the music beyond where you found it. So, all right. So you're hanging in LA. You're doing the GIT thing. You don't remember. You don't remember your instructors, which I think is classic.
No, I don't remember his name. So I don't think it changed. It could have, for all I know. And Tony, maybe you have some recollection if things were run the same, but I remember having like a weekly lesson and a guy that I kind of had to answer to as far as like the packet that you get every semester and like the requirements for your like final. I don't know if it would make sense that it would be the same person the entire 12 months that you're there. And then, you have access to everybody else whenever you want via these open counseling sessions and things like that.
It kind of was. Yeah. I had some guy that was from Austria and he barely spoke English. And so all that we did, he would say, "Show me a lick."
Show me the scales now.
No, he would steal my licks.
Oh, I shall take your licks and make them my own.
Wow.
That's so it was, 84, 83 through 84 was just weird. It was just like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do my best to graduate. And I did for the most part.
Yeah.
I shall give you an A and I will keep the licks. Sorry.
Play the 2-5-1s. Play 2-5-1s in 3 keys in 3 different positions. Okay, you win. You get
that. Well, what a great exercise.
Yeah.
Here's your receipt. I mean,
no. Think of it. 2-5-1s in 3 keys in 1 position.
Right, but in 3 different positions. So anyway, that's how you graduated. Yeah, basically when I was there. That I can recall. It was so long ago.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It wasn't that structured.
Yeah, they didn't make it super tough to get through the course. I mean, there are people that went through the mill, and I don't think that they were any better. Probably when they
those left. Are all the students that I got.
But I mean, that happens at private universities too. I mean,
sure does. Yeah, it does.
Well, and I want to get to that, but while you're at GIT and maybe I'm jumping the gun here because maybe it happened when you got back east to University of the Arts. But Where was the transition for you, Erik, as a guitarist that went from Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, bending, rock and roll to, oh, let me look into this jazz harmonic content thing?
I think that being like, I forgot who, maybe it was Guitar Player magazine at that point in time, how I learned about Vai and Satriani. And, I think, I don't remember what year it was exactly, but like Satch Boogie, like, he had, and Eric Johnson with like Cliffs of Dover, like you started to get like instrumental guitarists having like actual radio play.
Airplay. Yep.
Yeah.
And some of those Satriani records, stretched things a little bit in the sense that it wasn't just like, power chords and 1-4-5ing it all the way through. So that kind of like bent my ear, and listening to like Flexible and things like that. And then I think it was when I was at GIT, Scott Henderson was there. Yeah, there you go. And I saw him play and was just like, I want to do that. I want that. I want to recreate that sound. Like that was probably seeing him. He had like a weekly, well, he did open counseling. I don't think he was really on tour much that year. He was definitely there more than he wasn't. And he also ran this like, it was like a performance class where a trio would play for maybe 20 minutes. And then he would just be like, all right, like, let's, here's this chart, this fusion tune, like anybody want to come up and play it? And students would just raise their hand and go up and plug into his refrigerator rack behind him. And
right. Yeah.
And so that happened like every week, and I would go and I'd watch. I would never have felt like I could sit in, because I couldn't have, let alone trying to do it in front of him. I mean, he was just like the pinnacle, in my opinion. And but I guess that's where that whole like thing started for me. And then when I got to, it wasn't really, I didn't really get involved in like the local scene, like in tandem going there for school and being like, I'm going to start to immerse myself in the local rock scene and the whole, I was never really into, I guess, the aesthetic. I've used that term a lot. I know in the last 50 minutes, probably more than I have in the last year. The whole 80s thing, like teasing your hair, wearing spandex, that whole thing was not my thing. So I wouldn't have been a good candidate to fit in. But I know, at the time that I was there definitely was a shift in, you could see it in the scene, like the way people were dressing was changing from when I got there. And right after I left was when, the grunge thing happened.
Right.
But yeah, I really just kind of focused on getting better and on the stuff that I was studying there, and then wanted to further it, and applied to a few schools and got into U of A, and that's where I wound up.
Okay, so you were interesting. So you were when you applied to University of the Arts, were you still in California?
Yeah.
Wow, that's dedication.
Well, I mean, I knew.
I mean, because
I'd had enough gap year. I had a year off in Burlington, and then, or the better part of a year in Burlington, and then, GIT. I knew there was nothing beyond a year, and there was no, here's your degree, here's your diploma type thing, and I wanted to study at a deeper level, I guess, and.
Do you think that desire to study on a deeper level was because of Scott Henderson?
I'm sure.
Like, had you never experienced that dude, do you think you would have had a different trajectory?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't say so. I mean, that
Okay.
definitely helped, but it wasn't like this incredible
Okay. I was just curious because
moment where I'm just like, I heard him play and now I know what my mission is, you know. But it was still, you know, I was still in awe, but it definitely helped me like to want to figure out what he was doing. And that's a long road to, it's a long road to figure that out.
were you when you were out there before we leave California, when you were at, because I was living out there at the same time, clearly from your description. Were you going out to like the baked potato? Were you hanging out at any of that? Like, were you?
I didn't know the baked potato existed when I was there.
Okay.
Sadly enough, I went to like the clubs on the strip, like
Okay.
the Roxy.
So you were, yeah.
You know, so
You were you were going to the clubs that was all about 8 balls and hookers and blow and
whiskey.
all that. Yeah.
So I wasn't into jazz at that point where that I knew enough of that.
All right. So would you consider yourself at that point still a rock guy? Like you're still a rock dude?
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. And this is important to me because like it's why I do these shows. I'm trying to learn something. All right. So you're in GIT now. Okay. So your biggest influence at this point in terms of what will later lead you to the Common Ground record, because that's the thing, right? But
it's a thing.
It's a thing. It's a thing of many. But was it the? I'm going to go back to Scott again. You're out there. You're hanging out at the Roxy. You're hanging out. You probably hung out with Lemmy. Do you think that any of that, like the Scott Henderson thing, do you think that any of that, if that hadn't happened, that the Common Ground record wouldn't have happened for you?
That's a good question. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think that if I hadn't gone to college, if I hadn't gone to University of the Arts and just like did my time at GIT and just stayed in LA and try to make a stab at being a musician out there, there would be a lot less of a chance of that happening, because when I got to U of Arts, it forced me, you know, obviously to really hone my focus in on a specific genre, where GIT was a little more kind of do whatever you want with the offerings of doing whatever you want. Like, you know, we've got the jazz thing and we've got the country thing, we've got the rock thing, and we got, you know, but you weren't like, you have to do this one thing, other than meeting your requirements for, you know, proficiency wise. But stylistically, the school wasn't nudging you in any way. At least I can't remember that. Tony, maybe you had a different experience, but
not really. The one thing that I do think about GIT from that period of time, 83 through 89, 84 through 89, is that it was a scope of 40, let's just say 40, 50 years worth of guitar music, and they're shoving it into you in 1 year. And you pretty much come out with whatever you want to come out with, or whatever sticks. And that's how kind of it worked for me that way. I'm just going to say I definitely was a better guitar player after I graduated than what I walked into. But there you go.
Yeah, and I definitely I didn't know a lot going into University of the Arts, but the little that I did know really helped, because I think I would have, had I gone straight from high school into a music school, I would have been a 4-year accredited school. Not that GIT wasn't a music school. I would have been would have been a lot harder to keep my head above water than it was.
Yeah.
But when I got to U of Arts, one of my roommates was a really incredible drummer from Manhattan, who was like, you know, Dave Weckl was like his guy. He hit me to like everything that I needed to be exposed to. So, you know, I don't know, had I maybe, eventually I probably would have sought those people out, but at least right when I got to school for music, my 4-year trek in jazz studies, you know, at least I had somebody saying, check this out, or you don't know about this person, like you need to listen to this, you need to listen to that. So then started like the Schofield, Stern, Matheny, you know, all the guys, and still, you know, and still Henderson, obviously, but you know, and I really got into that stuff, and that all started to like help me form, you know, the stuff that eventually led to, you know, the Common Ground records, which a fair amount of the first record I wrote in college. Fortunately, like there's only 2 ensembles when I was there. It was a big band ensemble and what they call the fusion ensemble, which really was we'll just leave it at that. It was a fusion ensemble.
Man, you are so polite. I can't believe how polite you are.
Fortunately, the director of the fusion ensemble, who is the director of the music, the jazz department there, really great guy named Evan Solat. He, you know, really promoted people in the band, if they wrote stuff, to use the band as a means of, you know, getting your stuff played. So, okay, you know, that was invaluable, you know.
Wow.
And that's really like that's how kind of it got started, just getting my ideas played and performed. And yeah.
So you're composing music that would now later be on the Common Ground record. What was that process of composing that music? What was your process in doing that?
You mean
like what, like okay, for instance, like when I'm here in my studio, I have a process. Like, you know, when I come up with original music, you know, it's like I fire up the drum machine and I just start to do my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then that eventually evolves. Back in the 90s, and I'm bringing this up because, Eric, I don't know if you know this, but you and I were label mates. I was signed to TMP Records for like, I don't know, maybe a month.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. But in those days, what I would do, because I was on the road with a Nashville band, is I would write the charts longhand, like just lead sheets, nothing special.
Yeah.
And I would snail mail them to the guys. And then when I would get home from whatever tour I was doing, we get together at my house. And I was living in Sicklerville at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we one day rehearsal, and then we're out and we're doing it. So that's really my question, is like, when you composed the music for Common Ground, what was your process in doing that?
That's a really good question, because honestly, like I'm trying to, now that you asked me that, like I'm trying to remember back, because this was before music software. You know, this is like 19, when I guess when I wrote that stuff, it was probably, I got to yours in 89. It was like 90, 91, 92. Like I did have a 4-track, like small, you put a cassette in, 4-track.
Yeah, the Fostex. Was it Fostex? I still have mine.
I probably just like got the ideas out that way and then wrote the parts out. But it's interesting because like now when I write things and I'm using Logic's my DAW of choice, you know, you can massage things and like listen back and be like, I really like, you know, you can take a step back and be objective. Whereas like back then it's like, I don't even really know how all these parts are going to sound together. Like I have an idea, you know?
But did you find that using the Fostex, you know, it might've been a Tascam, Fostex, whatever. I found that using that at that time, because we were talking about the same years.
Yeah.
I'm sure my music was probably much, you know, it was probably shit compared to what you were doing. But what I'm saying is that I learned harmony. Like I understood how to integrate, you know, not just frequencies, but harmonies. Were you finding that too, where when you were working on this 4-track, which is like, to us at that time, it was like, oh my God, we're going to the moon tomorrow. This is amazing.
Sure.
But were you able to even expand on the harmony that you might, that you were already using through that technology? Or was that already in your head?
Yeah, no, it's not like the 4-track was going to give me some powers that I didn't have before I pressed record on it.
So I'm a piece of shit because the 4-track gave me all my powers.
God, Chris.
So I'm sorry. I'm just telling you.
I mean, it's a device that we use to. It's a sketchbook, I guess, a way of organizing musical thoughts, and hopefully putting them in a way that, like, at the end result, there's a song. But I don't think that the only time that I think that might be, like, let's say I was going to write like a guitar solo section, and it was going to be like a harmonized 4-part harmony guitar solo, a la like a big band, like, and then I could hear all of the parts. I could play each one into the 4-track, and but there's a different timbre of instruments. Like, I didn't know how this was going to translate to sax. I mean, I had an idea. I listened to enough. That's all where, as far as digestion of music at that point in my life, all it was fusion. That's all I listened to.
Okay, so at what point did this happen where it's like, that's all I'm listening to?
It just happened. I guess it was like when I got to college, and I just got further and further more exposed to different artists through that roommate of mine, and liking it, and the tribal tech stuff already resonated with me. I mean, it's a small leap to Stern, to Brecker Brothers, to Electric Band, all that stuff. It's all swimming in the same pot.
Okay.
So that's where my head was at. So naturally, I'm trying to emulate in any way that I can. As how close to the mark I came, I don't know, but like, I tried to get out.
Well, I mean,
in my head, what was in my head was what I was listening to.
And I bring it up because I remember listening to that record a lot. I had it on CD because, sorry guys, I got it for free. I was a label mate. I got it for free.
You're talking about the Common Ground record.
The Common Ground record, yeah. And I remember the cover. You with the long hair, looking all sexy.
I did have long hair.
Yeah, you had the long hair, and you had it was like a 335.
Yeah, it's right over there.
There we go. That's
nice.
It. That's the one. I'm pointing right at it. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
But I remember listening to the opening track because I was leaving for Nashville, and I had my CDs with me, and that was one of them. And I remember listening to that, and I'm not going to lie to you, Eric, man, I was pissed off at you. I was like, fuck.
Oh.
I had no idea why I was on the label. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here?
Come on, man. Thank you.
No. I don't mean that. I'm not blowing smoke, or I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm like, listen to this record going, man, like, this is like, and it's fascinating. It's what I love to hear about this backstory about, which I didn't know. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm learning this about you now, which I'm really fascinated, because what I know about you is from Common Ground and beyond. And it's an amazing album, and
thank you.
And what really, the other thing that scared me about it was like, okay, he didn't just play on this; he fucking wrote it. You wrote so many tracks on that album, man.
Yeah, it's interesting that we put 2 records out on TMP, and the
yeah. What was the second one? I'm sorry, I want to make sure that's
it was
up
called
there too.
Not Enough Space.
Not Enough Space, right? Okay.
So yeah, it's interesting how the record and the label, the relationship came about. A good friend of mine that I don't see nearly enough these days, Chris Farr.
Yes, Chris. Yeah.
Incredible sax player. We were. I was maybe a year ahead of him at UArts, but we became friends, and he was in the fusion ensemble with me, and we started to like, we just were playing a lot together. And Common Ground initially was like an actual band of UArts students, myself, Chris Farr, this guy Howie Thompson, who still lives in the area, bass player, a drummer named Mike Cortese, who moved back to Rochester and has been there since, and this guy Dan Zank, who lives up in New York, has a really successful career working doing commercials, working at a music house, and great keyboard player. But so Chris was really close friends with the DeGanges, the sons of Tom DeGange, who owned the place and owned the label. And
Tony, by the way, the
Yeah.
DeGanges, absolute amazing people.
Really?
The fact that they put up with me and love me,
yeah,
tells you everything you need to know. But
Okay.
Tom DeGange
Mr.
owned
D was a good
TMP.
guy,
Yeah,
or is a good guy. I think he's still with us.
yeah, he's still with us. Yeah. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was at that time. We had a demo that I was shopping to any label. I just like pull out all of my tapes and start mailing stuff to Blue Note, like just way over my head, shooting way over my head. But I'm like, hey, what's the worst thing they're going to do is just send me a letter saying no. This is like before emails, or emails were a thing, but people weren't really emailing. Anyway, nothing was really happening, like nobody was really having any interest. So Chris, with his relationship with the DeGanges, they had just, they started the label. They had a guy from Atlanta who moved up to Jersey to basically be like an A&R, like a guy who runs the whole thing and like finds the talent, develops it. Anyway, I think Mr. DeGange got burned. I think that guy like got an advance and then just kind of left town. And the whole
I think there was some clandestine shit happening there. But
the whole direction of the label after that happened, I think that they were kind of like, like bit pretty hard, and we're kind of like rethinking things. Are we even going to keep doing this? And Tom DeGange Jr., Tom Sr.'s son, who was a drummer, was a peer of ours. And I think he helped like convince his dad to like, maybe we should do something with Chris's band that I was in, or that we were all in, Common Ground. So anyway, long story longer, we got presented with a contract, and the rest of the people in the band, some were just kind of like going in another direction, that being the drummer and the bass player. Mm-hmm. And the keyboard player wanted to be involved, but he didn't want to sign the contract. So it was just Chris and I. And at that time, I was the only one really writing most of the material. Wow. So that's why that first record is just kind of like heavy writing wise on my part. And the next record was more of a evenly distributed between Chris, myself, and the keyboard player, because the rest of the band were hired guns.
Right.
So
okay.
That's the other thing. Yeah. Like once we sign with them, no one knows who we are. So, and Tom Sr. knew well enough that if he wanted to make some money, that we needed an impetus for people to just see it and buy it. That being, okay, I'll spend some money and get named people to play on the record, which happens a lot in.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's the key. It happens today.
Don't know. Yeah. So yeah, we were really fortunate to, on the first record, to have like a whole kind of group of people, some not nearly as well known now as they were then. Or wait, I should have said that backwards. They weren't known then, but they're known now.
No, you nailed it.
Yeah. So, obviously Dennis Chambers, Randy Brecker, bass player on that record was this guy named Tim Lefebvre, who was in the Tedeschi Trucks band for years. He was on like Bowie's last record.
Yeah.
He's an LA based bass player, but Massachusetts born and raised and lived in New York for a really long time. So when we put the records out and did gigs, there weren't many, but we would use him on bass. And at that time, his musical partner was this drummer named Zach Danziger, who was like on all the early Wayne Krantz records, along with a number of other projects he's played on. That was kind of like the core group. And then the second record was a little more streamlined. It was Dennis, and then James Genus played bass on that.
I think I recall now, and here's the thing though, is that they came to the studio. Yeah, because I remember, I think, if I might be mistaken, but I remember when Brecker was there, we were told, because we're on the other side of the establishment, don't go through that door, because, yeah. No, it was a big deal. And I remember it distinctly. And I remember, I guess you guys had wrapped by the time I had gone in there to start. Who knows? Maybe, I don't know.
When did you do your record?
Man, it was after yours, because it was
after the first one, or this, like our last.
So
one?
what year did you record the Common Ground?
The first one. So each one came out like probably a year after we recorded it. So 95 and 97. So 90.
Oh man, we were sharing time. We were sharing studio space.
Did Ed DeBona engineer your record as well?
Who?
Ed DeBona?
No, it was another dude. I'm not going to mention his name. I
guess.
Yeah, no, didn't end well. But the initial tracks are great. But that I'll leave it at that.
And was that a instrumental rock record? Or?
It was an instrumental record. Yeah. But I mean, none of that actually came to fruition until like the shutdown, when I actually said, "Oh, I'm just doing it myself."
So
it wasn't a bad thing. It was.
So the record never came out under the TMP label.
No, and by that time, you're talking 97, right? When your second record,
the second one came out,
97. That's when I took the gig to go to Nashville, and at that point, I don't know what happened to TMP, but I remember the store changing hands.
Yeah, I don't know when he sold the whole thing and kind of got out of it, but once our record came out and we played a little bit in support of it, but I think Chris's vision and what he was really interested in was changing, and he was leaning more towards the straight ahead thing. And it just kind of like was one of those things where it's just like, it just kind of faded away in a way. I can't even remember if our contract with the label was for a certain number of records. Obviously, I guess it was no more than, it was probably just one with an option for a number, because that would mean that if they didn't want to sink any more money into us, they wouldn't have to.
Right.
And I think at that point, the writing was on the wall. He had spent a fair amount of money with promotion with Bon Lazaga. I don't know if you know Bon.
Oh, I know Bon very well. I used to teach with him up the road on 73.
Okay. So I know that he, through his label or something,
Lolo.
Yeah, there was exactly some synergy with TMP and Lolo. And,
yes.
He was getting studio time in turn for helping us out, and so.
So did you? There was no touring behind any of that, right? Like, I mean, except for maybe locally. Or...
Yeah, Baltimore to New York.
Okay.
You know, Philly, Baltimore, basically like those 3 towns, and that was it.
It's interesting to me because, I listen to Common Ground. I'll be honest, I haven't listened to a lot of the second record, but it's the Common Ground. And then you say, well, Chris Farr wanted to go in a straight ahead direction. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you could probably do that, right? I mean,
do what?
Straight ahead.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm definitely coming in from a more contemporary. When you say straight ahead, I'm not a traditional player at all,
So I'm gonna take this opportunity because I wouldn't have been able to get this from Jimmy. I'll edit that out. What's the difference? What is a tangible difference between contemporary and traditional? What would a student be missing or not missing?
I mean, missing and not missing. I don't know. I mean, I'll give you my 2 cents, but there's so many people that are well versed than myself to comment on this stuff. But I am no jazz historian, or I do jazz gigs to this day, but I don't consider myself a jazz player, like a true, like Jimmy is. I mean, Jimmy.
Okay, well, let's clarify this even deeper, because I've said those exact words, but there's a big difference between the way I play and the way you play, Erik. Mm-hmm. In the sense that you have the dialect of a jazz player. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
And that's what I'm really interested in, is in this particular topic, is that you're able, because for the life of me, I can't do it. It doesn't matter how many years I played at the Grotto or anything. I don't have the dialect, and I never will, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But I'm interested into where you picked it up.
I mean, it was college. That's the thing. I guess it came through the filter of fusion players, because I never had like a phase, like a West phase, or like insert any trad jazz guy.
I love that,
because I was coming from. What's that?
I love that idea, because I've heard that a lot. Like, oh, I went through my Larry Carlton phase. Oh, I'm going through my this phase. But you didn't go through that. You didn't experience that.
I went through phases, but they were just different. None of the players were traditional, like straight ahead players, I guess you could say. So I think that the people that I was listening to heavily when I was in college, and for a few years after, until I just kind of got burnt on all of that. At one time in their playing, were listening heavily to, bop and things like that. But I wasn't exposed to that at a young age. My parents weren't, my mom was like into like Anne Murray and Barbra Streisand, like show stuff. And my dad was like the most unmusical person I know. He didn't listen to anything. And he wasn't interested in music in any way, shape, or form. So, it wasn't like I grew up around the house and my parents exposing me to stuff. So the only time that I got that vocabulary was when I got to college, and that's where that started for me. I mean, I was listening, like I said before, to some Al Di Meola stuff, like more the Passion, Grace, and Fire, like the McLaughlin, Di Meola, Paco de Lucia record.
Yeah.
That really resonated with me. That's not straight ahead jazz, but those guys are, they're harmonically it's complex, and they're, so I guess so to answer your question, I guess, about what's the difference, did you say, between like contemporary jazz player and a trad one.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that you can, within the genre of even straight ahead, there are contemporary guys and traditional or trad players, you know, and so within that genre, it's like if you're traditional, you're using harmony and improvisational ideas and language that comes from a past era, whereas like you listen to Kurt Rosewinkle or Jonathan Kreisberg. I don't know if you're familiar with any of these players, but Kurt Rosewinkle is actually from Philly, from Germantown, I think, or Mount Airy. You know, these are guys that are at like they're carrying the torch for and pushing the envelope of jazz guitar, you know, and on a more fundamental level, when you think about like contemporary players, it's more like, you know, the harmony is different. It's not a whole bunch of 2-5-1s. It's just more stagnant, moving, for lack of a better term, maybe modal stuff. And, you know, vocabulary wise, it's not as linear. It might be more intervallic, and using, you know, if there's more advanced harmony, that means that your improvisational concepts and ideas have to be more contemporary, because, you know, you're not just outlining 2-5-1s. You know, you're playing against major 7 sharp 5s, or, you know.
Right. Did you find that when you got into your writing process, did you avoid that? Did you avoid the 2-5-1 motion? What was like?
I think yes, but it wasn't because I specifically was like forcing myself to stay away from it. But again, it was just like I was just a product of what I was taking in, and what I was taking in was not, you know, straight ahead stuff.
Right.
So
okay.
What's in my ear is this fusion thing, and that's why I just kind of ran with.
I just find it like it's so fascinating, because, you know, and again I keep going back to the record because it's the thing I listen to the most of your output, you know, because I listened to it when I was on the road with the Nashville act, Common Ground, and I just, you know, it's interesting to me that you know you had this vision of this music that you were able to put together in a very concise way, you know, and then just make it happen, you know, like, you know, this is what it is.
Well, you know, I mean, it's I don't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, it's so good.
I mean, everybody that puts out a record, yourself included, you could say the same thing of. I mean, you have a vision for what you want to release, and somehow you make it happen. And, you know, I was lucky enough to, like, albeit, you know, TMP was, at the time, we were the only ones on the label, you know, but I was like, you know, I don't know, 25. I didn't have money to like hire Randy Brecker and Dennis Chambers and, like, you know, spend weeks in a studio trying to make a great fusion record. Like, you know, so, you know, yeah,
it's great. Yeah.
It wasn't GRP. It wasn't, you know,
but you know what's interesting that you say that, you know, it's not GRP. I really think that in a perfect world, maybe that's a shitty thing to say, but in another world, that TMP could have been the next GRP. Take my album off of that list, but with what you were doing, there was an edge, you know, and what I loved about it was that it represented that East Coast sound. And we were talking about this with Jimmy, you know, like there was an East Coast sound to it. Like it was like, yeah, it was fusion. There was some shit. Like I heard some LA in your ass. I don't, you know, you might disagree with me, but I'm like, I listen to your guitar work on that album. I'm like, yeah, that motherfucker is in LA. He must have spent some time on the West Coast. I hear that shit. but there was still this East Coast vibe, and I'm not getting into like one's better or not. It's not the point. It's just that I could hear it in that record, and I really think that TMP could have been, an amazing record label.
Yeah.
Hell, if I was at that point when I was at the Grand at that point, then I would have made that record. I would have made that record the East Coast fusion jazz label of the world. Anyway,
yeah, there's obviously a lot of components that go into. I don't even really know because I've never owned a label, but like it's not. I think any label it's a tough business to be in, and being the owner of a label that's a jazz fusion label, or even a jazz/jazz fusion label, that it's not like you're going to get rich from doing this. You do it because you love music and
Okay, so if you look at it historically, whether it was EMI, because EMI had not EMI. What was it? There were these jazz labels. GRP was one.
Yeah.
And there was a few others, and they had a sound, right? But they were subsidized.
Well, EMI definitely had a sound. You're right. EMI had they kind of curated. Like GRP was probably a little broader in scope, but I'm sorry, not EM. Did you say EMI? I meant ECM.
ECM, thank you. That's what I meant.
Yeah. So ECM had more of
I gotta have Eric around because I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Like ethereal kind of I don't know some adjectives, but they definitely did have there was a sound, a unifying sound with all the artists on there.
Yeah.
On that label. It's kind of like Windham Hill with that the Hedges, Michael Hedges was on that kind of new age.
Windham Hill, yeah. And Doyle Dykes was on that label.
Who was?
Doyle Dykes. He was that, one of those, the acoustic, kind of like a Hedges protege, in that direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the guy from Jefferson Starship or Airplane.
Oh yeah.
Craig, he was on that label as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there were these, but each label had a specific sound to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the interesting thing about TMP is that when I thought that would have been the sound, to me, like the way I would listen to, Common Ground. I'm like, oh.
Well, I guess.
And my record would have been. I think my record would have lived in that world, but in a, over here. Because it was guitaristic, it was guitar centric,
mm-hmm.
but it wasn't a Joe Satriani album. It wasn't a shredder record.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff you did on your record was way shreddier than anything I did on that record.
Is that? I'd love to hear that record. Is it around?
No, I don't have any access to it.
Huh.
Yeah. Awkward silence inserted.
Was that it? Not to get too well, you can edit this out if you want. Was that a TMP thing or was that another?
No, I will not put that on TMP at all. I you know what? As far as the Ganges are concerned, they're saints. I love them to death.
Was it a Lolo thing?
No, it wasn't a Lolo thing either. It had nothing to do with the labor representation. It had to do with the engineer. And I will edit this part out. The engineer, just made the editing a lot easier. So it had nothing to do with the DeGanges or Lolo at all.
Uh-huh.
They were absolutely gracious to me to give me the studio time to do what I did, and it was a great learning experience. And honestly, I was off with Nashville Act for the next 2 years, so had anything actually solidified with that anyway, I wouldn't have been able to do anything with it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Not without any kind of like, oh, let's position this and no. So, I mean, I don't look back on it from a negative standpoint, but the motherfucker ran away with my masters. I'll just put it that way. But that was not Tom. That was not TMP. That was not Lolo. I want to make that very clear. Those motherfuckers are awesome. And I'm not going to mention the engineer's name, who was not affiliated with any of them, but fuck that dude. All right, moving on.
So where in Hollywood where were you? Were you living in Hollywood, or were you?
Oh yeah, I was right on North Cherokee.
By
Love's Restaurant. I don't know if Love's was still there by then. When you got there. Oh, I gotta shut this door. And no, I'm good. So yeah, that was like you said, the culture. Oh my God, it's like because I came from the Quad Cities, which is a group of cities right in Iowa and Illinois. And it's just it's not a huge. Let's just pretend it's the corn. Okay.
Yeah.
The heart of the Midwest, and so it was. Oh man.
So did you stay after?
I tried to hang. Yes, I did, Eric. I tried to hang out for another 6 months after I graduated, and then it's just like there was more guitar players there than you spit and you just spit on a guitar player. So there were that many there.
Yeah.
So I worked at Vans shoe store on Sunset Boulevard, and it just got close to the holidays, and I just said I can't deal with any of this. I tried.
Yeah.
But there was no place to go. There was no there was just too much competition that was had the look.
Yep.
And that were just a little bit better than me. Well, okay, a lot at that time.
Yeah,
because I was only let's see, I went out there when I was 19. I turned 20, and so I was only 21. And I had no idea. I didn't have a clue. So I came back to the Quad Cities where I live, and I became the big fish in the little pond. Yeah.
And then now, do you still play today, or?
Yeah, I'm in a AC/DC tribute band called Rolling Thunder. We tour. Yeah, we tour about 4.
Oh man! As an aside, while we're on the subject, Eric, have you ever heard of this band? I think Tony, I told you about this band. I don't even know if they're still around. They're out of Vegas. They're called Guilty Pleasures. They do all these. Eric, you're gonna appreciate this shit. They do all these metal songs, like "Run to the Hills" by Maiden, but they do them in the style of the music is in the style of Steely Dan. The singer does Michael McDonald. He's like the Michael McDonald impersonator. Dude, I'll send you this shit. Matter of fact, I might even incorporate it into the show because it's so good, but no one knows who they are. It's better that like I would rather hear their version of Run to the Hills than Run to the Hills.
What's the name?
Guilty Pleasures.
Hold on.
Oh, we're doing this. We're gonna do it.
You gonna do that?
I'm gonna do it right now.
Hold on, let me get my tablet of stone out here so I can.
No, well, I'm gonna play it.
Oh, you're gonna do it?
Yeah. Because there's no copyright issues. I'm not gonna get. Okay. Guilty Pleasures, Run to the Hills. Check this out, guys.
Oh, come on.
What? Who are you talking about? You're
just the neighborhood.
Your Midwest neighborhood? Here we go. Okay, here we go, guys. I don't know if you can hear this. This is live, by the way, so it's not a record. This is actually a cell phone recording.
What song is it? I can't quite make it out.
Oh, Run to the Hills by Iron Maiden.
Oh, so they totally reharmonized it.
Yeah.
Into a Steely Dan and or
Michael.
Michael.
I know it's a shitty recording, so it's not. You're not going to be able to get the full benefit of it. I'll include it.
I'll look them up.
Yeah. Look them up, guys. It's and it's funny, and you know what's sad is that from the video, the person whoever is videoing this pans to the crowd. It's like 10 people.
No, that's always
like no one's getting it. No one's like some people get it, but no one's getting it. And it's so brilliant, and it's just so like wow, And the guitar player is brilliant, like because he's trying to be the metal guy, but he's playing these brilliant lines, like these brilliant harmony lines on the guitar. That's like So okay, so what an amazing segue. All right, so
TMP, I guess
we left at TMP. Where was your next move? What did you do, Eric? Like, what was your vibe? Like, okay, TMP, that didn't happen.
Family, kids happened.
And really? Okay, so
Yeah, so like let's see, the last record came out. I moved down to Baltimore with my ex-wife, which is where she was from, and met some really great players down there. And that's actually how I made my connection with Dennis, was through this local guy down there who's like a local guitar hero. His name's Carl Filipiak. And Dennis, I don't know if you know this, but Dennis is from Baltimore.
Yes.
So still lives there as far as I know, but was living there when I met him and he played on the records. Anyway, moved back up here in 96. I'd had my first child in 96. And, it was just like, I was back in Philly, like trying to really trying to insert myself in the local scene. Because when I was in college, I really was just focusing on school, and then right out of college kind of happened the TMP thing. So I was just focused on that. So I really was never on the scene, so to speak. My college years are there a few years after. So, and then I started a business. I started a music school. But playing wise, interestingly enough, I joined a wedding band and did that for a long time. And the first wedding band that I was in, or one of the first wedding bands that I was in, wound up by like, you never know, it's a kind of a cliche, but you never know, like any industry, I guess, in networking, you never know what single person, a group of people are, who they're going to be, who they're going to work with, relationship,
Right.
And just oddly enough, like a really bunch of young guys were in the band with me, and a lot of them became sidemen still to this day with huge artists. And Philly has this I'm getting ahead of myself. So through some of these people, I got introduced and started to get involved in the local, at that time, Philly was like at the forefront of the neo soul scene.
Yes.
This is like the late 90s, early 2000s. And I played in this house band from like 97 to 2000 at this, it was the old Zanzibar Blue on 11th in between Pine and Spruce.
Yes.
It was called Wilhelmina's. And the drummer in my wedding band was a producer. He was 19 at the time, producer that was working for Touch of Jazz, which is DJ Jazzy Jeff's like Umbrella, his like label conglomerate, whatever. I don't even know if that's still a thing today, but this is going back a while. Anyway, there was a number of local artists that were being developed that went on to like have a fair amount of fame, like Jill Scott. I don't know if you know who she is, but her first record was nominated for a Grammy. And Music Soul Child, or he just goes by Music now, I guess. There's a number of other people that I can rattle off names, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But this wedding band was kind of this impetus of like, or a lot of these people were involved in this band that was played at this club that I was in every Thursday night, which was kind of like the grounds for spawning the neo soul thing. And a lot of the people that I mentioned earlier that were signed and have careers and platinum records or multi-platinum records, they were all like a regular local person that would come and sit in. Like the band would do a set, like instrumental, like Headhunters type of stuff, like groove oriented fusion, you know, bass, drums, keys, guitar, two horns, and trumpet and trombone. And then we would open it up to like spoken word singers, rappers. And it just kind of became the spot. This preceded Questlove's. I don't know if you know what Questlove is.
Yes.
Near Thompson, the Roots. He kind of, this whole thing stopped in 2000, and he carried this torch at this club called the Five Spot that burned down in Old City. Yep. And it was called the Black Lily, his weekly thing, where he kind of like, it was the same thing. He was just carrying the torch. But, you know, he's somebody that, you know, produced a lot of people. When they would come into town, this was like the place to go. So it was just like the who's who of like that movement would just kind of be involved in that scene. It was just kind of a magical kind of period in time in Philly in that genre, you know?
Yes.
So that was just kind of like where I guess I went after the fusion thing, and then didn't really like do a whole lot of playing for, I mean, other than like the wedding band and like periodically playing my own quartet. Like I started a quartet with pedal steel, upright, and drums, which was more kind of like a Bill Frisell kind of ish project that I've had for a number of years. And we'd play Chris's like 4 times a year, and that would be about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So not a ton of playing. I just never really focused on my business, and like, you know, I have 3 kids that are not kids anymore, but yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about the school?
Oh yeah, sure. I never thought I would own a music school. If you asked me that in like, you know, college or something, I'd be like, what? But yeah, you know, like everybody, you've got to figure out a way to make a living. And being a musician, like, and having kids, if you want to have a relationship with them, being on the road is not the thing.
You ain't kidding.
Yeah. So
you see what I did there? You see what I did there with the kid thing?
Yeah. You're
not
okay.
kidding.
Right.
So, you know, it's like, what can I do? What can I do that would create some form of stability and not like, oh no, this month there's 4 gigs on the books, what am I going to do type situation. I mean, I was also fortunate that my ex-wife had like a corporate solid job, but you know, regardless.
Same here.
So yeah, that's what I did. I opened a school here in Manayunk in like 98, I guess. And just open to the public, general run of the mill, you know, guitar, bass, drums, piano, wind and string, brass instruments.
Wow.
So let me ask you, when you opened the school, did you have a syllabus, or was it just, hey, this is what we're doing?
Yeah, I never implemented a syllabus. I found that when you're dealing with the general public, you've got people that are entering at so many different levels and want so many different objectives,
Yep.
Some of this, it's just like, I want my kid to just tack on another activity just so like they're completely overstimulated. So it's like you put these.
Somebody finally said it.
So,
oh, thank
We've
God.
just been waiting so long for someone to finally say it.
They're like so many people, like no fault of theirs. Like they get intrigued and they're 10 and they want to learn, and then they find out that it's like,
oh my God, I have to press. I have to press on this thing.
I've got to practice.
Fuck this shit.
3 months later, they're like, they're on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So implementing like a syllabus was never.
Okay. So basically, you opened a school that was like, oh, this is what we offer, and I get that. I think that's great. Because so you're serving the public. You're serving.
Yeah, and just really relying on my network of players as faculty.
Clearly, I was not in that network.
You were busy in Delaware running a school.
Dude, I'm just busting your balls, man. I'm sorry,
Chris.
You were running an accredited.
Well, you know what? We'll get to that shit in a minute. I'm more interested in your school, but I'll tell you how that school went down the shithole.
Really?
But your school's still going, and this is what excites me.
It's not still going. It didn't survive COVID. I had a good run, So I had the one location that I opened in Manayunk in '98, and then I opened one in Berwyn, suburb of Philly.
Wow! So you actually had 2 locations.
Yeah, I had 2. I opened Berwyn in '07, and then I closed Manayunk in '11. And then the same year, I opened up another location in Berwyn. And that was kind of like a multi-purpose space, lessons. And it was like a listening room on Fridays and Saturdays.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So describe to me what your listening room was and how did it help the society?
That's a great question. Great question.
I was running out of the school in the suburbs was like really kind of taking off, and the one in Manayunk was like dying on the vine. Okay. So I closed the one in Manayunk, and I knew that like I needed to expand somehow because I really didn't want to turn people away. I mean, it's a good problem, but you don't want to do that to customers.
Right. Exactly.
So, the space was kind of like it wasn't laid out the same way. There was it used to be a dance studio. So part of the space, the majority of the square footage of the space was a large open room. So there was nothing really like it in the media area as far as for live music. So I went into it, knowing that it would be a multi-use space.
Okay.
With that as, with incorporating like a School of Rock thing, because School of Rock actually had opened up down the street from me, and I didn't have the space. I just had a whole bunch of I had 9 small 9x9 rooms. I had no space to really hold an ensemble class.
Okay.
So this space served that purpose, and the listening room part of it was just that I was getting at that time kind of more involved with the local singer-songwriter scene than like the jazz or the fusion things, like way in the rearview mirror at this point. So I was like, it'd be a good use of this. It would bring awareness to the school because people would be coming to see people play that have no idea or awareness of the school. So there would be always material there, and it would always be some type of an announcement about what the space is and how it serves the community, things like that. So, so yeah, it was a good 3-year run and of that space. And then my lease was up, and my landlord wanted to use the space. So the landlord of that building owned a number of properties in that area, and he had a son who below me was a restaurant, and it had been for years, but every like 3 years it would kind of change hands. And when I first started leasing the space, it was vacant, and it was vacant for about half of my lease. And then my landlord's son decided he wanted to take a stab at the restaurant business. So he opened the restaurant, and when my lease was up, they took over my space and basically used it as an extension of the restaurant.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
So unfortunately, yeah, it was like things were going pretty well, but like it was a 3-year lease, and they don't have any reason to, let me continue to be there if they want to use the space themselves. So it was just kind of like, I just bowed out, and I wasn't going to try to like start that
over.
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then it was just, the one location in Berwyn, and then COVID came, and, we went remote like everyone else did. And then I guess it was 2021, August of 2021 was when I was just like, so many things had changed. So many of my faculty had relocated to like Nashville or LA. It just, if I did reopen the brick and mortar, it was just too much of an uphill. And I was honestly like, been doing it for a long time, and felt like I really wanted to focus my energy on other endeavors that I've always have wanted to, but haven't been able to because I was busy running a business.
Right.
So,
and that was primarily musical based, right?
What was musical based?
Well, I mean, your focus. Like, I understand you're running a business, you're running a school, and obviously that's musical. But when the situation with COVID happened, you were like, okay, I'm gonna. When you say focused on other things,
other things being really film scoring.
Okay, that's where you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, we come to the film scoring thing.
That's cool. I've always tried to get my foot into that door. It is very, very difficult.
Yeah, and I'm not in that door, so to speak, really. Not to the extent that I want to be, but I've gotten some traction. But it's not an easy, by any means, an easy road.
So I have to ask, how are you feeling about teaching today? Like, as a teacher, how do you feel? I'm
no different than you mean, like, personally, like, how do I enjoy teaching still, or do you mean like student? Oh,
well, yeah, everything.
Both. Yeah.
I mean, it was a very broad question.
Yeah. I mean, like, as far as the students go, like, it's the same now as it was years ago, as it's always been. I get nowadays, it's like a lot of adults that think that they have the time and the willingness to commit, but inevitably work and life gets in the way, and there's not many that stick it out for any really substantial amount of time. And kids are a different thing, and I used to teach some kids when I had the location, but since COVID, like, it's just worked out that all my I don't have any kids. They're all like 35s, like my youngest student. So
you are a lucky man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna edit that out. I'm gonna edit that out.
I mean, yeah, I know. I mean, actually, you know what? Age doesn't bother. Like, if it's a child and I see that they're excited about it and they're engaged and they practice, like, awesome. Like, I've had adults that I didn't want to teach because it was just like.
I think that's a really good point. I mean,
we didn't practice again. Like, you know.
I have students, and a lot of my students are private, like yourself. Older cats. But even with the kids, I'm fortunate that 90% are there because they're like, holy shit, I want to, but they're also resilient because I'm an asshole. I'm a fucking asshole.
Are you a taskmaster of a teacher?
No, I'm just a ball buster on owning, the bits. And that came from directing for Rock School. I directed for Rock School for a decade. Mm-hmm. And, it was like, okay, we're doing this show and you signed up for it. You're going to own your parts. And they did. Mm-hmm. But I realized that after all these years that I was away from it and now being back in the organization, it's just different.
So you're back teaching at a school, Ron?
I'm only there one day a week. I'm there as a consultant, and I'll probably edit this out too. It's not great, man. It's not like it was. Like it used to be great. Like I remember, when I back, we're talking like 10, 12 years ago. I got a call from the director. Tony, I'm sorry. Turn off your microphone, man. That fucking dog.
So this is all the Downingtown.
No. This was in Wilmington. So after I left after the Grand Opera House thing happened, and that became a political issue, right? So here I am, the director of the Grand. Everything's going great. Everything's going fantastic. Mm-hmm. And the CEO. So whenever a CEO leaves, there's a changing of the guard. And so the last thing I did before the CEO left was I brought the School of Rock to my location. Because I live by the rule of, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer, because it's like, from a business standpoint. Because everyone was like, oh, the School of Rock is coming to Wilmington. You can't survive. I'm like, fuck yeah, I can survive. I got the greatest staff in the world. I got Harry Spencer teaching alto sax. I got Jimmy Coleman teaching drums. Why not bring this world into what we're doing? And then they can cross-pollinate. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened. And it was successful. Everything was great. But the new suits at the Grand were completely horrified. Like, what's going on here? Anyway, long story short, we just up and leave, and we move to a new location. We set up a whole new school. And for 10 years, we're killing it. And we're doing, like, we did a Jason Becker show for Jason Becker.
Huh.
He watched it online. I had my one student now plays with the Iron Maidens.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to name drop now. My other student is and the kid that did the Jason Becker show with the yo-yo. He did the whole yo-yo solo. Mm-hmm. He's with Lizzie Borden right now. They're all out there killing it, right? They're doing their thing, which is great.
Yeah.
But it was visceral. Everything was visceral. It was like 4 hours, clearly not enough. Double your time. You know, like we were assholes. I'm not gonna lie, we were assholes. You're like, oh no, you have to have that song together in 3 days. You know.
Yeah, I think you, to some degree, yeah, the dynamic, you have to be that way in a program that has like clear defined deadlines. Like, here's the show, and the show is like Stones versus whatever, Beatles. You know how School Rock does it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I hate that shit.
Your parts are your parts, and like, you got to toe the line. You got to learn your stuff. You know, whereas like my thing, we had recitals, like biannual recitals, and obviously every time a recital comes around, there's a little bit of that, but it wasn't nearly to the, you know, you weren't a piece of a puzzle. It was like you and your teacher, maybe you were playing something solo, and if it got to the point where the pressure was too much and you didn't have your shit together, you could just bow out of the recital. It wasn't like mandatory, like everybody's got to do the recital, you know. So you had an out, you know. School of Rock was a different animal. Like, it was a performance-based program, and you signed up knowing that this is your role and this is what's going to be expected of you. Maybe not to the degree that once you get there, you're like, oh shit, people are like really depending on me to know my part. And if I don't, like, everyone's going to be pointing and laughing because all my friends are going to be there and their friends are going to be there, you know.
Well, it wasn't even a point and laugh thing. I remember when I did the Dream Theater show, I had a disclaimer. And it was the first time School of Rock ever allowed it. And the disclaimer was, we're doing this show note for note. And that's it.
Who was playing guitar on that?
Oh, I had 5 guitar players on that. And they
pulled it off.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Wow.
That show was note for note. So here's the story. So we're sitting there and we're about 3 weeks in. And again, like, I have to hand it to him. Like, you know, my boss was a great guy. He allowed the disclaimer, which of course is not something that, you know, would be allowed in a School of Rock, you know. And we're killing it. We're on point. We're moving through, you know, because the way I used to do things was I sent out the cast list way early. I knew who could do what and who was able to work on what not. Anyway. So we're about the 3rd weekend, and this gentleman walks in with this very small child. And I thought he was there to witness a rehearsal. Like, you know, I thought it was part of the tour, you know, rock school tour. He walks up to me and he goes, "This is my son. He wants to be a part of the show." I'm looking at the kid. "How old's your son?" He's like, "He's 10. I was like, "You did read the disclaimer, right?" Now, I'm being an asshole at this point. I'm already an asshole because I'm like, "You did read the disclaimer, right?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, we've read the disclaimer." He came prepared. He wants to do In the Presence of Enemies Part 1. He's prepared for that, which was already on the set list.
What's he play?
Drums. 10-year-old kid. This kid gets up there. I bring the guys up. I bring my crew. I'm like, "All right, Presence of Enemies Part 1. This motherfucking kid could have sat in for fucking Portnoy any night of the week."
Wow.
I shit you not, dude. I'm not exaggerating. There's no hyperbole here. I'm sitting there and this is how serious this was. I back up as he gets done all of those parts. And I look at his dad and I'm like, "Are you making any more of these? Are you pumping out any more of these kids?" Like, Jesus Christ. Like, this is ridiculous. That kid not only he ended up handling, like, I'd say 50% of the show.
Wow.
Nailed it, note for note. Like, He didn't miss anything. He knew every bit. Next time you sit down and listen to In the Presence of Enemies by Dream Theater, Part 1, listen to everything Portnoy did on that track and know that 10-year-old kid nailed it.
Wow. And where do you know, is he, where he is?
Yeah, he later went on to do a lot of stuff, but it was all local. Like he never, it wasn't like Courtney or Katie Jacoby, who was a student of mine who's now playing with the Who. She plays violin for the Who. But and that's not even important. The point being is that and it's something I wanted to talk about, is that idea of if you're gonna do it, man, you're gonna fucking do it. And it doesn't matter what you do, right? Like I mean, I'm Erik, I would never sit in with you on a jazz gig because I'd be filleted, right?
I don't know about that, but
I'm going to play the way I play, right? But as a what was your approach as a teacher to your students? What was your?
I mean, overall arcing. I'm not a taskmaster. I'm not a drill sergeant. That's just not me. It's not my style. It depends on the student. Like, after a fairly short period of time, whether, if someone's coming prepared and they really seem like they're invested and they're focused and and depending on the age, I've had a few kids go to school for music, and if they're coming to me at like, there's one, he's going to be a senior, I think next year. He's at the University of Cincinnati, and he started at my place in Berwyn when he was 5. And now,
wow,
he's not my student. He was my student like the last few years at the school, but I remember him coming in because the kid was just so damn cute. He was like, just lugging this guitar, and I mean, like a lot of little kids were. But I remember his teacher, who was a really good friend of mine, saying like, "Man, this kid is like a sponge." And so my teacher, the teacher who taught this kid at a young age, he, I don't know if you know, do you know who the local artist who's internationally known named Amos Lee?
Yes.
Singer-songwriter. Well, a lot up until about maybe 4 years ago, Amos used all Philly people in his band. He still has his music director, still a local guy, and some other people, but the whole band. Anyway, my teacher was like the utility guy in the band, played guitar, played pedal steel and dobro. And so at that time, Amos's thing was taken off. Like, they were opening for Dave Matthews. So he was gone like a month and then back for a month and gone. So there's a period of time where I subbed for him when he was on the road. I remember when he came back and I was like, man, that little kid Tristan is like a sponge. He's just like, he sits down and he's just like totally present, focused, like a sponge, And it's like students like that, when you see kids and how they interact with you and that, like, well, maybe they're not going to go to school for music, but they've got a propensity for things and an interest, and those combinations of those two things like help equal someone that makes it a living. There's a lot of other variables that go into it down the road, but for him, all those things align, and I don't know what's in store for him after school, if he's going to like make a career out of it. I'm sure that's what he thinks right now, but I know a lot of peers of mine that I went to school with didn't wind up making music a full-time thing, So
that's really interesting, because I think all of us have had students like that, where you're like, that moment where you're like, oh shit,
yeah,
I call it the oh shit moment. And unfortunately for their parents, I tell them that to their face. I'm like, oh shit,
Yeah.
You got something going on here, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So it really, you know, as far as my teaching style, like if I get someone like him and they're like, you know, I want to be, you know, it's a progressive thing. Like I want to be in my jazz band, you know, they're going into middle school and it's like the 7th, 8th grade. I think it's like the big thing. And I'm like, okay, well, I know like if they're interested in that, then they're starting there in a direction that could potentially lead them to eventually like, you know, going to school for music. So, you know, there's a certain stuff you got to learn and it's not easy. And then if they meet that mark, you know, and they continue on and they might be like, I'm thinking about going to school for music, like college, you know, then it's like, okay, this is usually like sophomore year of high school, you know, all right, I know immediately what's involved with all that. I mean, having gone to school, I actually taught UArts from like 14 to 18. So, you know, I knew what was going to be required of these people. So, I mean, even if I didn't, you know, you get the requirements for audition.
Yeah, but that's interesting. And that's one of the things I wanted to touch on real quick was your time teaching there.
Yeah, it wasn't in a huge capacity. I taught, you know, performance majors. I had like 3 private students. I had a couple of non-majors. University Arts works with a couple of other universities. And so I had some students that were getting credit for taking guitar, but they weren't part of University Arts and they weren't like, it wasn't for a grade. But it was there on campus. And then I taught a blues ensemble.
How was that? Was that cool?
Yeah, it was. Teaching an ensemble, you know, it's interesting, even at that level, and you're there at a college and these people all signed up to like spend a lot of money and a lot of time and energy on being there, just not having their shit together, you know. Not coming, just the basics, like not coming prepared, like showing up and being like, oh, like, do you have a cable? Like, I don't have a cable with me. And like, you know, they're pulling their charts out of their like gig bag and like literally like uncrimping them on the music stand, you know, it's just like, and there were kids like that when I think that's just like, it's just part of the ecosystem of a music school. You know, you've got a spectrum and every music school's got like kids that are just like, why are you here? You know?
Yeah.
But then you also have other kids that are killing it. Yeah. And then you can't even figure out how they're killing it. You know, where they show up and you like, I had this happen at one of my ensembles. Kid comes up and out of he was bass player. He's still a student of mine. Brilliant kid. And he all crumbled up. And I'm like, how are you gonna be able to read that? He's like, no, I think I have it. I think I have it here. Mm-hmm. And it was I Wish by Stevie Wonder. And he's killing it. And I'm like, you know, but it was really weird because I'm like, why did you even bring that? Why did you even bring that piece of paper?
Oh yeah,
he's like, because I was trying to be respectful.
Yeah, I wish that I've always been a more of a literate, like needed that chart. Like I've always, I don't know, I have some friends that are just incredible players by ear. They can internalize things. Like there's so many great players in this town. Philly is like, anyway,
Philly's a pull.
But there's a good friend of mine, this younger guy, bass player, and I knew he had like this really great memory because I did a number of gigs with him, and he would always like he wouldn't ever play looking at charts. He just always internalized the music. But
Okay.
I told him on this gig with the singer-songwriter that I play with, and we're doing like, this guy's got numerous records. We're headlining. We're playing like a solid hour and a half set, no break, 20 some odd tunes of this guy's, and it's not just, GCD. It's like
right.
there's a lot of parts and a lot of changes to his tunes, and we had I don't even think we had a rehearsal. He didn't have a lot of time. I could never do that. I could never internalize an hour and a half of music and all of these changes and key changes. And like, he showed up to the gig and I'm like, how, no charts? He's like, nope, it's all up here. And I'm like, all right, I guess I'll see you at the end. I hope this goes well. I mean, I knew it would. I didn't doubt it, but I was just like amazed at this guy's ability to do this, to internalize this stuff and remember it. It's incredible. I don't have that ability.
So you do, on certain gigs, you have charts. You have something.
Yeah, yes, because there's no. I mean, for a number of reasons. I mean, the biggest reason is the amount of money that I'm getting paid to do the gig does not, in any way, shape, or form equal. Like for me to internalize an hour's worth of someone's music, like you get it.
Yeah.
No, I know. That's why I'm.
Yeah. So I'm like, unless like I play with the person a fair amount, then like for Ben's gig, I don't use charts. I did when I first started playing, but I've got it all up here now. And there's a few other people that are like that, but most gigs that I go on, we don't play enough for me to internalize it, just kind of like by repetition, sheer repetition.
Sure.
And those gigs don't pay nearly enough for me to like spend the time to internalize it, which I would prefer to do that, but I prefer to internalize it, but yeah, I just don't want to spend 15 hours trying to like memorize stuff for a one-off or a gig that might happen 2 times a year that pays $200. Like,
no, and I think it's an important topic that I think has been avoided, and the bottom line is like that's the deal, like that's the gig,
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to if like me, if your ability to internalize things is not like my friend Nick Perry's, not the guitar player, really, the bass player from. I don't know if some people might get that, but do you know Nick Perry, the guitar player?
No, I actually don't. I was laughing at your core of what you were saying.
There used to be a band called Silvertide. Did you ever hear that band?
Oh yeah, I've had to transcribe a bunch of their shit.
Yeah, they're from Philly, and like they were like, I don't know, teenagers when what's his name? Who's the old dude who music mogul guy who owned a label, glasses, died a few years ago, but I mean, he was still active like up until when he died. An icon. I can't believe I can't remember this guy's name.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, he like came to the the Grape Street.
Yep.
Yeah. He signed them there. Anyway, they share the same name, but they're not the same person. So I thought you might draw a reference. They're 2 different people. Anyway, I forgot what I was saying.
Oh yeah.
Spending time memorizing things, pay. Time's precious, man. Especially as you get older, you start to think about like time is the invaluable thing. I mean, your time, and what do you want to do with your time, and what do you want to focus on and commit to? And I love these people's music that I play, but it like, again, like it does come down to like, I could be doing a lot of things. If I can get the job done and I have a piece of music in front of me, then that's the direction I'm going to go in. Now, I've never run into someone who's like, I think all of these people that I work with understand that like, yes, my gig does not pay enough for you to as much as I'd like all my bands to memorize material and not be looking at sheet music while I'm doing my show at World Cafe Live or, you know, wherever, Johnny Brenda's, you know, that's just part of it.
Right.
Now,
no,
I guess if you're a band leader, or you're a solo artist and you really don't like that, then I guess you don't hire those people. But I've never had anybody say, will you be reading on my gig? You know?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
No, I find it interesting because you're talking about time, and you're right. You know, time equals money. Like if you're going to sit there and say, okay, look, if you want me to do this show, and you know, if I go out and do a show, if I go out and do a fly date with like a Queen tribute or whatever, I have to be off book.
Yeah, I mean that's a different.
Which is why I charge stupid amounts of money.
Yeah. I mean, you're not doing a $200 gig and flying to somewhere. Like that's what I mean. It's the not to make it sound like it has to be all about money, but the payout's got to equal the input, you know, like your time and effort in preparing has to be compensated for.
So what would be your dream gig?
Oh gosh.
What would be Erik Sayles' dream
at this
gig?
stage? I mean, I've got a bunch because I really like a bunch of different types of music. Like
dream gig where you could do, and I'm narrowing this down. Dream gig pays all the bills and nothing to worry about. I know. I look. Rainbows and unicorns. I get it.
Like no meteors are gonna come and like take out America.
No. Oh, the meteor's coming whether we want it to or not.
Police aren't just pulling over.
No. I'm saying like the dream gig, the all-encompassing gig for Erik Sayles. What would it be?
That's a good question. It would probably be like playing in like there's not a second guitar player, but it'd probably be like, the second guitar player in like a Marcus King band, or like playing with like Eric Krasno or something like that. I don't know if you're familiar with either of those two artists. Because
I'm with you.
It's like, groove oriented improvisational stuff, but it's not like overly indulgent. I guess some people might argue with that, but
why are you afraid of being so indulgent? I got to tell you, Eric, I watched some of your videos, man, and I love the Telecaster, man.
Oh, thanks,
dude.
I'm not afraid about being overly indulgent. I guess, I think I stopped and was going to take that back in that, and to clarify, I guess a little bit, like, I guess I feel at this point, at one point, I don't know, I've changed my musical tastes have changed over the years, and the fusion thing to me is just kind of like, I don't know, like I would never write and make like the Common Ground records. I just feel that that's just like, not that it's overindulgent, but I don't feel like there's as much to hold on to. That style of music doesn't resonate with me like it did back then.
Do you feel that you made a statement and then you're okay, I've made that? In other words, and I want you to forgive me for this because I do this all the time. I round about my questions, but you made a statement on those two records. And do you feel that if you did anything like that again, you'd be redundant?
No, I don't feel that way at all. I feel that I just like my musical tastes have changed. I guess
So
that's the answer. So like the music that I sent you, I don't know. I mean, I just sent it to you today. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to any of it. The MP3.
dude, I can listen to it right now.
Oh boy.
Oh man, I feel a little resistance from Erik here. Did I have a chance to listen to it? No, I've been editing Jimmy Bruno videos all day.
Yeah, I can just tell you, like the 2 tracks that are a record that are recorded like a year and a half ago are very different from stylistically than the fusion, the one.
Yeah, but what you? I mean, I watch your videos.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm being I'm being a little dickish here.
Oh, no.
Intent. There we go. Here we go. Listen to the harmony underneath of that. Okay, I'm going to stop it right there because I'm already scared. So there's this beautiful melody that's going on. Now that melody I can completely connect to. I can connect to this melody right away. And this is what I love about this, is because I'm a rock player. Mm-hmm. So I can listen to this and just abandon everything I am and dive into that end of the pool and enjoy it. But if I was a player like you, Erik, that was like, oh, that's my opening act, and I'm listening to all these harmonic changes that I'm sure you wrote. Mm-hmm. This is what I want to know from you. And you're going to hate me because it's late and I'm going to keep drilling on this. Where's this coming from? This whole thing right here, just that, the harmony.
Yeah.
Where's that coming from?
I guess just, it sounds like a douchey thing to say, but I guess my knowledge of harmony. I found myself I don't know. Late, in the more recent past, like a lot of this record that's not out yet was spawned by starting with a drum track. Like I might find a sample, or I might have bought a sample pack from Loop Loft. I don't know if you're familiar with that website, mm-hmm. which, you can basically it's drummer heavy, but they've got Charlie Hunter and some other people where,
wow.
These drummers are just you might get a folder that has 6 folders, subfolders that are all backbeat 130
gotcha.
BPM, and in that folder are a whole bunch of examples of a groove, at that BPM. So I might pull one out that I really like, and then I'll just start messing around with stuff. And that's how a lot of these songs came about. So that the impetus was the drums. That was the first start. And then I would just just start messing around.
So for you, just
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that song itself has the targets of the A section, you could say, is just like G, C, A, D, all dominant seventh chords, but I'm approaching each one by a half step above, like bum, bum, below, bum, bum. So, you can approach any, well, it's obviously situationally specific.
Right.
Certain styles of music, blah, 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 all these boxes you have to check. But I'm saying in a broad sense, when it's a kind of like, for lack of a better term, like a blues based situation, approaching any dominant chord, like even if you're in a blues, instead of laying on,
Go ahead, grab it, man. Don't be afraid.
I'm scared.
Don't be scared. If you're scared, say you're scared.
Scared.
There we go.
No.
I don't know if you can hear this, but if you've just got a 1, 4, 5, I can approach it by going.
Right.
But if I on beat 4, whenever I'm changing my chord, I can approach the upcoming change. So if I got a bar of A, my one chord, and then a bar of D, and then 2 bars of A, on beat 4 of each bar, I can go above or below my target. So in this instance,
sure.
I'm going
okay.
So 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
So.
Come below.
On and on. So taking that, like a simple concept that's like completely easy to understand, a layperson that doesn't even play gets that. You just approach this thing. Obviously, they don't know the form or the chords, but you know what I mean. The concept of going a half step above or below creates like a whole nother dimension that makes it sound like like there's a whole lot of stuff harmonically going on that like is really advanced, and it's not. It's really just moving things around in half steps. Again, that doesn't work. Like you can't just take that and use that on every single musical situation. It sounds right, but in this case, that's what this tune is. It's been a long time since. I'm not even getting it right, but it is all like. Something like that.
Yeah, no, I hear it.
Yeah.
But I love the idea that was the motif. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, and then there's some other. The next section is kind of like up a minor third. I forgot what it is. It goes up to C.
There we go.
No, it's A, B, A, so it's repeating that again.
Yeah. It's just great. There's so much melodic content, where you have this kind of palette that you've created that you can,
Yeah,
it's awesome.
It's fun stuff.
It is fun.
What drew you to the Telecaster, man? Like, what was the thing? Like, what drew you to the Telecaster? I mean, I've seen some of your videos. I mean, I've watched some of your videos with that, and this is a 2-part question. What drew you to the Telecaster, and are you interested in Nashville?
Oh, what? Sorry, what did I do to the?
No. I don't care what you did to the Telecaster. That's a personal question. What drew you to the Telecaster?
Oh, gotcha. I started about 12 years ago. I started playing in an alt country band, and I was using the 335. It just wasn't, wasn't
Squawky enough.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't giving it a twang, baby.
Yeah, it didn't have the twang, and I don't know. I got it, and I kind of started using it for everything, and just unfortunately, like, I really don't play the 335 much. I love it. The problem with it is that the pickups are just so, so different that, this, obviously that's not a standard Tele.
Yeah, look at this. You got to look at this because Tony, you got to look at this.
I've seen it.
This is the ultimate touring guitar right there.
Yeah, it's a really cool setup. So these two knobs are a standard Tele situation, volume and tone. Okay. This is a volume knob dedicated to this pickup.
Ooh.
So it blends it, and in phase, out of phase, and it's got 3 positions. And yeah, it's the Brent Mason, who's like
and it is, but I'm very interested in that neck pickup there.
I'm sorry.
Please talk about the neck pickup there. You conveniently left that out.
So this whole thing is this is a unit. So I didn't Frankenstein it. Like, I bought his signature series set, and it comes these 3 pickups. So with a standard Tele, you have to have someone like do some routing and
right. Okay. But I'm noticing that neck pickup.
It's just a mini humbucker. It's just a
standard.
Okay. Yeah, I know, but that's where you're going to get your jazz tones from.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Cool. By all means.
I'm going to put you on the spot, man. Give us a little bit
for some jazz.
Yeah.
I'll give you some dissonant.
Give us Erik Sayles, man.
I don't know what that means these days.
No, that's what I'm talking about.
I'm not really. There's a little 2/5.
Whew.
5/1.
The fuck chord was that?
It's just a major 7.
Yeah.
I'm basically just taking you could look at it a couple different ways. 2/6 a second apart. So I'm playing, for all you guitar nerds, D, E, B, C.
Okay.
So, not relative to root, that being C, 9, 3, 7 root, and then just moving everything down in the scale to the next note below.
Look at that.
So that would be considered like a planing idea, where you're looking at the chord in relation to the scale, and that could be many different voicings under that umbrella moniker, right?
Yeah, so I guess I view and think of the adjective like planing as more like taking a shape. Like, the way that I see it is planing happens more in like quartal harmony, quartal, not chordal, quartal, like quartz.
Okay.
So planing being taking an idea, like for us guitar players, I'm going to talk guitar specific because this doesn't translate to piano. In that we have, if I take, for instance, like I'm just in the key of G, and I'm playing E, A, and D, right, on strings 4, 3, and 2, and I continue in the scale, moving each string to the next nearest note. This is the harmony that I get from it. Okay. Now, there are times as I'm moving up the neck that I have two shapes that are the same. They're identical, but a whole step apart, right there.
Right.
And there. Planing is like taking those shapes that are identical and just connecting them chromatically.
Oh, interesting. Oh, okay.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's a couple of other things that you can do which are kind of interesting. Other than taking the same shape and moving everything chromatically, you could take a note that's constant like A to make that shape that is bridging the two that are diatonic, make it sound a little more inside, because these two are inside. This shape is completely outside of the key of G.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a pedal point, like Mike Stern would do this, he has these, like, I'm doing a really poor job, but he would take a pedal point. He would take a note and put it at the top of a series of chords. So that note had relevance to each chord, but it wasn't the same chord that he's moving around.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but getting back to your question about these, yeah, I mean, essentially, this, for all intents and purposes, this is like the 1 chord, the 7 chord, the 6,
right,
the 5, the 4. If this is scale degrees, 2, 3, 7, and 1 relative to C. Well, if I go down to here, it's going to be the same. I'm going to have the root in the 7th and the 3rd of my 7 chord. Because it's the same thing as if I just take a normal standard
1, 7, 3, 5.
Right. If I take harmony that's built off of thirds, which is standard harmony, and I move everything parallel, I get the chords in the key. F major 7, G 7, A minor 7, B minor 7, flat 5, C. You can create harmony and harmonize things in other intervallic organizations of other intervals, and that's all this is. It's doing what I just did here. Yeah, I can play. All that is just moving up in C in thirds.
Right.
Well, I had to reorganize the notes because guitar players were not playing things 1, 3, 5, 7. But you know what I'm saying. I'm moving things through the scale, each note going to the next nearest note. They just all happen to be chord tones. If I choose a different interval to harmonize, either it doesn't have to be all the same, like not all thirds. It could be, I can just pick one. I can go up, well, if I'm in G and I take a 5th and a 3rd, that, and then I just go up each note. I'm creating a different set of harmonic structure. Some of those notes may be relevant to a chord tone, like here, that shape. It actually just so happens that all 3 of these notes are chord tones, but down here, it's not. Anyway, not to get too in the weeds with that, but yeah, so the planing thing, I often relate to chordal harmony just by simply because the shapes on the guitar are more conducive to that type of playing, where trying to play in with like harmonies built off of thirds is really kind of difficult when you're dealing with more than just like 2 strings. You know, I could do it in thirds, you know, but when you start to add more notes and get to like this, there's not as many shapes that are identical. I can do it with, you know, A minor to B minor.
Right.
But beyond that, that's the only time when we have a scale harmonized in thirds that we get 2 qualities that are a whole step apart, 2 of the same qualities that are a whole step apart.
Right. Yeah.
So it's hard to like bridge like a major 7 up chromatically to then a minor. It just doesn't sound the same. But the chordal harmony, it enables you to kind of get away with doing that type of thing.
Yeah, I guess at that point you have to get into the whole Barry Harris thing, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many different schools of thought and how to approach just harmony.
So Eric, I just have to ask, what's your reach on the high E string from the 5th? How far? What's your reach?
Oh, he's getting technical on you.
Oh, you mean my reach this way?
Yeah, because your hands are huge.
I don't know. I mean, I can play the 12th fret. I don't think I would ever try to play anything actually. I mean, I can do that.
All right. Oh, fuck. Yeah, Tony, fuck you. Grab your guitar. You asked him. It's like asking a dick size here.
Yeah, I know.
We're doing it. We're doing it.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
I can go 5 to 12.
I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I can never play anything like that.
Right.
Comfortably.
Well, I don't think it's even important to, but you know.
I don't know. Well, it is me, man.
All of a sudden, we're sitting there going, "Oh, how far can you reach? I don't know. How far can you reach?"
Is that an ongoing question?
Hey, 1978
no, it's
called.
not. I just noticed it.
1981 called. It wants its reach back.
Okay.
Reach has nothing to do with it, man.
So yeah,
asshole.
Yes, I'm an asshole, Chris.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
I know. We're just having fun. Just having fun.
I love that though. Yeah, but no, I will admit that Eric's hands look very sexy playing those chord voicings.
It's the fisheye lens that I have attached to my.
Yeah, that's exactly what
laptop.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, the telly. You know, I've stayed with it because as you know, as you both know, pickups and output greatly affects gain structure, and like you know, every time there have been a couple times where I've used it, I only have 2 electrics, and it's this and the 335, and I've played with this guy who like sometimes I have to have one guitar and draw in like E flat and the other in standard, and it's just a nightmare. Like because the 335 has a lot higher output, so it's like if I have a setting that's like kind of a nice little breakup but not too much distortion, it's too much distortion for that, you know. So sonically, I just stay with this one. It seems like it's a little more versatile.
Well, yeah, especially the way you have the pickup set up, you know.
Yeah. So,
matter of fact, when I was doing the Grotto back in the 90s, I used a telly on those gigs.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And I had the humbucker and the neck position, and you know.
Yeah.
Because I had to leave that gig and go do a country gig, so it was like I just get it all in one. Yeah. Now, of course, you know I'm a piece of shit because I got, you know, I'm surrounded by these now, and they all have different sounds for different songs, you know. So, you know, I'm not, you know, I shouldn't even be speaking on this issue. But yeah, having that one guitar that can do the gig, yeah.
Yeah, it's served me fairly well so far. And it can do the crossover to the jazz thing. And you see, I don't know if you know who Julian Lage is, one of my favorite jazz, but he's not a straight ahead guy. Do you know who he is?
What's the name again?
Julian Lage. Oh, Chris, pull up. If you're gonna pull something up, you will, be blown away. Were you gonna pull something up?
Yeah. I don't have a producer. I have to do it myself.
Oh.
Julian Oh, got him. Already got him.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Oh Lord, I have a feeling.
Do you see Albie?
Recordings just got better.
What is it?
You see Albie Seeing You? Is that?
Hold on.
Is that an option?
I can find that. I can find that.
It's got like 2.6 million views.
Got it. You went to live in Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Or just okay.
Yep.
Oh, he's playing a telly.
Yeah, he's a telly guy, but he plays an intro. It's like 2 minutes of complete brilliance. Like just wait.
Wow.
It's crazier.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
This is. Lost him.
That looks like it. Wow.
Anyway, you get the
Sorry, I had to get water.
So he's probably like one of the
Well, keep in mind, everything we just listened to, there was no reverb or delay. That was into an amp.
Yeah. His setup. He did recently. I saw that. I think the guy's name, the host, is John Bollinger, the rig rundown guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He recently did a rig rundown with Julian, and they spent the majority of time talking about his two guitars because his setup is like a Fender Vibrolux, and he's got like one little it's like an attenuator box, and then I don't know, like a tiny reverb pedal that's like on mixes, like a quarter of a way on. That's it. It's just
right. Yeah. It's like, okay, that's your amp. Okay, well,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, and this is what, and I have to say, Eric, this is one of the things that I love about what I've seen your posts recently, kind of coming full circle to is that when I see your post recently with you with that telly, man, like that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like you're exposing yourself. This is what I sound like. This is me, and it's fucking phenomenal.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. That's what I try. Yeah, we all try as best we can to get out to have I guess a limitless expression from what's going on in here to here, and it's really hard to make that happen.
But do you feel that your expression? I mean, it's always like an ongoing thing.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Obviously, that's why we do it. But do you feel that you're on track?
I mean, I don't know what is that?
Okay.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, like, yeah. I mean, I guess like I could be the type of person that has like some idea of like I want to sound like this person, or I want to sound like this, and I'm not there, and I need to do steps.
Okay.
A, B, and C to get there. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I apologize.
There's no apologizing. I guess I can say that I can always feel like I can know more and get better at the instrument. I honestly think that I've been focusing more on enjoying writing and creating different types of music. Sorry, something just popped up. I got to close it. And, really haven't been spending as much time really shedding stuff on my instrument. But I guess, I'm happy with where I am now. As far as like what my playing and my ability to get out what I'm trying to do. It could be better, but I'm not like beating myself up over it. I do have like a lot of different things that I want to do musically. There's stylistically just spans a lot of different things, and I really want to try to make some of those happen. I just have to focus a little more probably on one and get that out of the way, and
try to move on to the next.
Yeah. So
and part of what I meant by that was trajectory in yourself, not so much outwardly. I mean, in terms of what you're producing, like what we produce as artists, all three of us, is what we're producing from something that's happening,
on the exterior. Is that what you're trying to say? Or the interior?
No, the interior is where it begins. So I guess my question was somewhat premature in the regards of, Eric, are you on the trajectory musically, like with where you are in terms of writing? Not that anyone's heard yet.
Yeah.
But in terms of what you're coming up with.
Oh yeah, I guess yes. I think that I am. Again, there are things that I want to do and collaborations that I want to make happen that haven't yet. But as far as like writing the type of stuff that I want to and feeling like it's good enough to reach out to these people to collaborate with, like, yes, I'm happy with that and okay with all of that, I guess, if that answers your question.
Yeah. Just curious as where you're going, like where your next adventure is musically.
Oh, musically, it's not like guitar oriented. Like I write a lot of different types of stuff, like alt pop stuff, And that's the direction that I feel like, I don't know, right now, that's what resonates with me more than like shedding my arpeggios, you know?
Yeah, and I don't want to make that sound like, oh, you're doing a guitar record to do arpeggios, because I know, that my next record, fuck it, I'm not doing a single arpeggio, and fuck all of you who are expecting it. It ain't happening. I'm fucking done with it. Anyway, we're back to the show.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess it's not like I'm gonna put out I'm planning on putting out this
you should do one though. You should do one just for shits and giggles, Eric.
Do one
you should
what?
Do a shred record.
I can't. I don't have it. I got to spend some time getting that back. I don't think.
No, you don't have to do it now.
Dude, I can't.
For shits and giggles. And technique. You know what? I'm gonna produce it, and we're gonna call it Shits and Giggles. Erik Sayles, Shits and Giggles.
Perfect.
And dude, it'll be terrifying.
Well, how much time do you spend on your technique? Because you are I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody in this area that like has the facility that you have. I mean,
what facility do you speak of, sir?
You know what I'm talking about. Just
you know what I speak. All of a sudden, this show became the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, you know what, Eric? Maybe you can help me in this. So, are you talking about, all of this stuff?
Well, yeah.
The economy picking thing.
Yeah. I mean, whatever the picking is, whatever your ability to play as virtuosically, as technically as you do.
Yeah, but is there any music in that at all? There's not.
Well,
right?
No.
And I'm asking you. I'm bringing this to the table.
Yeah, I think that there can be, like.
But I haven't found it yet.
No, I'm not saying that to. Don't put words in my mouth.
No, I'm not. Not at all.
I'm not implying anything. What I guess that I do know people that have a lot of facility, but like I do, like that it resonates with some people. It doesn't resonate with me. And I'm not saying that about you at all. I'm saying that in admiration that like I've watched your videos too, and I'm just like, damn, like it's just, it keeps going on. Like you can shred for, yeah. But you're not, like you're bending notes. You've got other stuff going on. You're not just playing scales for the sake of playing scales.
So I deeply appreciate that. And that was not a setup. But my question is that even if I had that facility, let's just say that facility's there, where does it become musical, right?
Well,
like where do you find that balance where it's like, okay, oh shit, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I mean that's a personal question in the sense that like that's subjective, and that's like you ask 5 different guitar players and to varying degrees they're all going to have different answers. Like when does something not become not musical? Like how many notes is too many notes to push that envelope to where you feel that it's like, oh, now that's just wankery. The threshold is different for everybody. But I think as, I don't know, I've gotten older, like I want something to, it can be fast. I just want it to move me. Like Julian Lage just played like a shit ton of notes, but
but it had a whole story behind it.
Yes. Whereas I hear some other people play and it's just like, it doesn't move
right.
Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily their playing. It might be a culmination of their playing and just their writing. I don't, it. Yeah.
So let me ask you this then on that topic. Have you ever done something in your composing career where you're like, holy shit, but it doesn't connect with you? You know what I mean? Like, in other words, I'm getting back to this whole thing where, yeah, I can play a shit ton of notes. I know the technique. It's just like, being a javelin thrower, but there's no artistic value to it.
Well, I think
that's my issue. I don't feel the artistic value to the technique that I possess.
So, question for you then, but that is a big part of your playing, right?
No, because what I'll do is I'll walk away from it. I'll walk away from it like entirely, and I'll grab the flying V and I'll just play viscerally. I'll just play rock and roll. But the conversation I had with Scott, whereas here I am, where I have this machine that I understand, but I'm not viscerally connected to it. Like, I have the technique, but I'm like, I can't make the music that you make. Like, when I listen to you, even going back, to the Common Ground record, I listen to that record and I'm like, I can't do that. I can't create that.
Yeah, but
I don't have that ability to bring that harmonic content together the way you did, or the way you do. I mean, I might hear certain things. It's a great rock and roll song. If you called me tomorrow and said, dude, there's $5,000 on the line and I need a rock and roll riff, dude, I'd get you something in 5 minutes.
Sure.
But if I was on the other end of the line, I'm like, dude, I need a fusion lick and I need a stat, 5 minutes. I guarantee you're the motherfucker I'm calling.
Yeah, but you could do that too. I mean, like, come on, man.
Not harmonically. Not in that, like, to me, and this is getting to my point. One of the things I want to talk to you about is the conviction of what you do. You know what I mean? Like, there's a conviction, right? Or am I wrong? Am I completely off the mark here?
Oh, I mean, do you mean a conviction in the sense that like I play with authority, or like there has to be, for anybody that plays anything, there has to be a level of conviction, because you have to be confident in yourself that you're going to play the right thing in this song, whatever song it is, that meets the level of proficiency that you have to have in order to complete the task ahead of you and play Brown Eyed Girl or whatever it is you're playing. There's a level of proficiency in every song, right? And that's varying to degrees. Gotta Match is a little bit different than Brown Eyed Girl, but you need some level of proficiency to play Brown Eyed Girl. And like, now, are you talking about playing it with conviction? Like, you're putting your foot on the monitor and like shaking your head and like, like acting like a rock star? Or do you mean
no?
Yeah. So define,
I'm talking about the harmonic content.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Talk about the harmonic. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can put my foot on any monitor and shake my head. So just look at me.
But as far as like a level of, I'm over here. Yeah. Yeah, level of conviction as far as like, can you narrow that down a little bit?
Okay. Not only being able to understand what I'm playing, right, over whatever the changes are, but being able to deliver it. I've always believed there's a dialect There's a dialect in the playing, right? In other words, if Eric, if you were to come out and see me play live, and you're like, and just say it was like a generic open mic thing, where it was like, "Hey, welcome to Thursday Dorian night. Everyone's playing Dorian tonight, right?" Like so you already know the setup. You're like, oh, okay. That's it. That's all I'm going to give you is, and I'm going to give you a shit ton of chops and all the fancy bits. But where am I going to be able to say anything? See, my issue is that I don't think I belong in that world. I don't think I deserve to be in that world.
Well,
of fusion. I have the chops. I don't deny it, and I appreciate you saying what you said about my chops. I
mean, it's undeniable. I mean, but
I got some shit.
You possess the ability to, like, if you wanted to be a fusion player, you could do it.
But I don't know how to do that.
Okay, and that's okay, and that's no like fault of yours. Like, it's just the fact that, like, I spent time studying this stuff. It's like it's not a. I mean, it might seem like a mystery if you don't know about it, but it's not something that you can't learn. It's just time, man. Like everything. Like you of all people, the learning curve for getting that stuff together would be so much quicker because you already know all of this. It's just learning harmonic concepts, learning about harmony.
But I understand the harmony, but I just can't sound like that. I end up sounding like
here's another
Sean Lane on crack.
Here's another thing. Like, what do you? I mean, I think that to a certain degree, I've said this before in tonight that, what you listen to has a huge effect on what comes out of you. Like,
right.
So what do you listen to?
You mean lately? Because
Sure.
normally I don't listen, okay. No, that's a serious question. And I believe that's the food, right?
Yeah.
It's your diet.
Yes.
Currently, because I'm getting ready for a UFO show, so I'm obviously listening to a lot of UFO music. But prior to that, I was listening to the records that Frank and Bali did with Stu Hamm and Steve Smith.
Okay.
Trio stuff, you know.
All right.
And I love that stuff, and I listened to it for years, But I'm like, I can't. Here's my thing: is that and one of the things I admire about you, Eric, is that you can write in that idiom. I can't write in that idiom, and I have always believed this. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I asked someone once, a great guitar player. I asked him. I said, "How do you know when you have a style?
How do you know
when? How do you know when you have a style? Like, how do you know when you're like, oh, that's my style?" And he said to me, he goes, "Oh, it's in your writing." I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Oh, write something. Whatever you write, that's you."
Okay. I mean,
so I wrote 3 albums, and it's not fusion at all. And in a lot of ways, out of respect, I don't want to dance with that devil. But here's my fuck up: is that I'm like, wait a minute, I have the technique. Why can't I write in that style?
Yeah, I mean,
or am I missing something?
So, well, technique doesn't. I think they're two separate things. Your technique gives you the ability to execute things, but that's only one dimensional as far as like writing stuff, technique is just one part of a process, but there's other processes that, technique does not equal good songwriting, or else,
Correct. Yep.
Everyone with every 15-year-old kid would be Lennon and McCartney. That's on, not every 15-year-old kid, but all the ones on YouTube that are like,
yeah, right.
That are just like,
all right,
shredding.
I love this.
Yeah. So, they're two separate things. And the people that I feel like, that some of the people that I listen to that write things that I feel are incredibly musical aren't like players. Like, I don't know, like Ray LaMontagne, who's like an incredible singer-songwriter. Like, his music moves me more than freaking insert a fusion guitar player does. It just, at this point for me, that's what gets me is simpler stuff. Even though like the stuff that you played earlier, that is a yet to be released record of mine, does not reflect that. And I wouldn't call that stuff fusion. It's not like the Common Ground stuff, but it's not singer-songwriter stuff. But anyway,
yeah, but it's your core.
It's part of it. It's part of it, I guess. And I would think that my core is multidimensional, because I write a lot of different types of stuff. I don't sit in one space. If you go, I know we're not on, we don't follow each other on Instagram, but that's a good place for a smattering of like a good swath of the stuff that I do.
Okay.
So yeah, it just spans a bunch of different stuff. And I at one time when I wrote the fusion stuff, like that's all I was doing. That's all I was listening to. Nothing else. And now it's like, I probably listen to, Bjork more than I listen to right now anything else, or like Debussy or something, like,
Right.
That's just what is the flavor of right now, and that'll probably change.
That'll change, and then it'll evolve, and
Yep.
That's great. I love that. I love that whole vibe of evolution, which I get from you. That, I'm kind of wrapping this up into that, because I know we've been going for a while.
Yeah.
I get that from you, man, is you've evolved, and I have followed you and listened to your music, and it's amazing.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it.
I get this evolution from you, which I love,
Well, I think as musicians, we're all, in some way, we're all trying to evolve. Who wants to play the same way that you did last year, last week? We're all trying to hone our craft and get better at what we do. And
Well, that's the whole thing. That's the thing that scares me the most. And I'm gonna tie this all in. I'm gonna wrap this up with this. And it's one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you tonight, Erik. Many years ago when I was a kid, and I think I've said this on other shows, I want to say it again. I remember meeting this man in a music store. I was like 15 at the time. And he says to me, he looks right in my eye and he goes, "I've arrived." And he's a great player, playing great guitar. But he says to me, he goes, "I've arrived." And I remember, I don't know why, in my 15-year-old mind, I said, I hope I never get there. I hope that never happens to me. Yeah. I hope I'm not that dude in a music store going, this is me. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But you said something that kind of hit me on that, is that, I think it's important to evolve, like to continue.
Yeah.
And for me, for whatever reason that is, regardless of what I'm doing, technique has always been a thing with me. Devoid of music, it's almost been like, I'm not the guy that goes to the gym, but I go to the gym here, and I'm like, yeah, running the scales and all that bullshit. But evolution is the key, right?
I mean, I think that as a artist and as someone that creates stuff, yeah, that's important. No one wants to be stagnant. No one wants to just keep redoing the stuff that they did in the past, and if you're not a writer or something and you're a player, you're always wanting to get better and evolve. You want to get your knowledge of the fretboard down better. You want to be able to play X, Y, or Z better. That's why you pick the damn piece of wood up every day.
Right.
Continue to try to figure the thing out, because you've never arrived. I mean, you've never arrived.
You don't want to, right?
No, you never do, because you can always know more things better. You can always, trust me. Yeah, you can know a lot of stuff, and you can still need to know more in different ways. I mean, turning things around, just, I don't know, shedding things intervallically or with octave dispersal or, whatever. There's always angles, I guess is what I'm saying, is, myself included, you get used to these well-worn paths of just your fingers are just going and you're not really thinking about things. There's always a different angle that you can approach things from to get you out of that rut and to make you say, oh shit, I got to put the brakes on and actually think about what I'm doing here, So yeah, you can always find ways of making things more challenging for yourself. It's just do you want to do that? Some people don't want to spend the time or the energy in doing that. So yeah.
But I think they should.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people should do a lot of things, but
Oh, that's a whole other show.
Yeah, that's another 4 hours.
Erik, thank you so much for hanging out.
Thank you guys both for having
me.
And
oh yeah,
it was great to communicate with you. And as I've said, I do this to learn, and I learned a lot. And I don't want to speak for Tony, but I'm sure he.
I'm just absorbing it in.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and had a great time hanging with you tonight, man.
Yeah,
thank you.
Likewise. I really appreciate it. And Tony, give those dogs a pat for me, will you?
Or something. I will, Erik. It was really nice meeting you. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. And I'll see you guys around the interwebs.
Okay.
We'll see you on the internet, interwebs. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And hopefully sometime in person, Chris. I know, Tony, you're a few hours from us, but yeah, you
never know.
Media? Chris, you live in media?
Yeah.
All right.
You know what? You know what? We'll talk.
Cool.
Hey, now I sound like Delco. We'll talk. Come down to a Tuesday night thing.
Oh, where's that at?
On State Street in Media.
You have a regular Tuesday gig?
I don't, but I know a dude, and I know a band on a regular Tuesday night at Off the Rails, right on State Street.
Oh, cool.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Yeah, you come on down and just scare the neighborhood.
Oh boy, I don't. The sitting in situations. I've too many horror stories, man. I've got PTSD from that. Actually, one of them. Not to digress. I know we're wrapping it up. But
no, do it. I'm still recording.
One of them
Give us a story.
A JJ Scrotto, Jimmy Bruno situation where.
Thank God I'm still recording. Bring it on.
He was nice enough to. There was a period of time where this was not at JJ Scrotto, but remember when, or maybe you don't remember, but there was a time in the late 90s where Alex Bartlett, who is a guitar player who wound up by buying JJ's Grotto and called it Alex's Jazz Underground. Do you remember that?
That was after my time there, but I'm with you.
Alex was managing and booking Chris's, and it really at that time became like a guitar room. Like Jimmy was playing there like 3 nights a week. There was like guitar amps there all the time on the stage. So it was just like, it was like the guitar room. Anyway, I kind of got to meet Jimmy then, and there are a number of nights where maybe you would edit this out, maybe not, where he would have a few too many adult beverages and
absolutely,
and be like, Eric, why don't you finish this set out for me, or finish the night out?
And of course, you could do that.
I mean, not to the extent that I could fill his shoes, but anyway, I think this was before that whole relationship started. But I went to JJ's. I went to sit in. He was nice enough to lend me his guitar, which was just like literally impossible for me to play. And immediately when I sat down, it was just like the action was just, you know what it's like when you get an instrument that's just like so different than yours. And
right.
I mean, it probably wasn't as bad as I think about it. It was in my mind, but like it scarred me. I was just like, trying to like get things, my ideas out, and they just were kind of flubbing and nothing was clean. And it was like straight into like a rolling jazz chorus with like no nothing, just like dry as toast. Just relentless, like, every little imperfection and thing just is screaming and coming out.
No.
Yeah. So yeah, it was like from then on, I was always like, man, I'm going to avoid this pain and suffering and just never sit in again.
Wow.
Anytime I'll play, it'll just be, my gig. I'm being a little overly dramatic, but as far as, it definitely stuck in my mind for a long time that night. So maybe I'll just come down and have a beer and listen to a band and we'll talk some more, but
there you go.
Yeah.
We'll start there.
Yes. We'll ease into it. All right, guys.
Okay.
Gentlemen, great time hanging with you tonight. Thank you so much. That was a great Jimmy Bruno story. I love that.
Yeah, he's a great guy, man. I hope he's doing well.
Yeah, he's doing great. He's doing great. He's still yelling at me.
Good.
That's my life. But
he's still got some gusto in there. He's still going strong.
More than even I have. I don't know.
All the more power to him.
All right.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right, guys. Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you.